Podium. You might not want me to touch it. Shelley. Right there.
Here, do you want to wait? I'm good. Do you have a sinus infection? Is it everywhere? Oh, your whole body.
Even my joints and my all over.
I was going to say you better stay home and just rest. Did somebody have it? You got it?
son.
Oh, gosh. I thought that was over with.
I had a flu shot.
Yeah.
By the way, the next time, call somebody else to do this.
Which is weird.
I don't want you to do it.
Do you want me to turn this on?
Oh, I'm not connected to that one, that's why.
You don't want it?
I don't need it, I'm powered up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that would be for you if you need a power strip.
Oh, okay.
I guess we can get started. Ready, Mr. Wolf?
I think we're good. That clock's late.
Close enough, right? Yes. Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting of the Lower Paxton Township Board of Supervisors to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Hawk.
Please rise.
Thank you. Before we proceed to public comment, I would like to announce that prior to this meeting, the Board of Supervisors met and received information from the Township Manager. The Board also met in executive session prior to this meeting and discussed 2 employee personnel matters. Having said that, we'll now open the floor for public comment for any item that is not on the agenda tonight. Would any member, any person present like to address the board on any item not on tonight's agenda? Okay, I'm seeing nobody wants to engage in public comment, so we will move to the first item then on our agenda, and we are pleased to have with us this evening representatives of the Colonial Park Volunteer Fire Company, and they would like to discuss the use of township-owned apparatus. Mr. Wolf, would you like to explain what we're going to be discussing?
Basically, oh, yes, I would, and I'm going to do it the easy way. I'm going to ask that Director Koshiba come up and provide an introduction into this item for the board this evening.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Adam Koshiba, the new appointed Director of Public Safety. Prior to this meeting, we understood that there was an ongoing issue with some of the apparatus usage with the Colonial Park Fire Department. Mr. Wolf and I had a meeting with Chief Fogg just last week and also with the executive board from the Colonial Park Fire Department. Some issues were talked about, some direction was considered. Upon those 2 meetings, I felt, as well as did the manager, Mr. Wolf, felt it was best that we refer many of these issues, though there is some existing policy, we refer it back to the Public Safety Committee for further discussion and the construction of a township-wide policy. However, the Colonial Park Chief and the Executive Board felt it would be necessary to come here and answer any questions from all of you. So,
Thank you. Actually,
Thank you.
First of all, it might be appropriate for the representatives from the company, we got tables and new microphones that are now working.
Ah,
Chief? You guys can pull the tables together, if you want. Perfect.
and for the purpose of the record, if you could just identify yourselves before we begin.
Sterling Colborne. John Fogg, the chief of the Colonial Park Fire Company. Sterling Colborne, financial officer.
Stephen Michaelon, president of Colonial Park Fire Company.
I don't know that we have a presentation per se, as much as we've had 2 meetings with the new public safety director. We're heading in the right way, but we felt like there may be unanswered questions from the board, and we figured we'd address any questions they may have. It seems like more than anything, it's been a communication issue. Obviously, there was a lack in a public safety director for a little bit, and we feel like that may have led to some of the problems. We've had an unwritten policy we've followed for years, and we feel like maybe the public perception of what we were doing was wrong. Obviously, if there's any misconception or ill conception that what we're doing is responsible, we've failed to educate the township board and the public as to why we're doing what we're doing. So that's on us. We should do better at educating why the apparatus are going where they're going and why we keep a crew intact when we need to. So if you had any questions about that or what we've done in the past, we felt since it was already scheduled, we would still come and answer any questions. But ideally, we agree with the director that this is probably better served with the 3 fire companies and the director and the public safety committee and address it there and hopefully get you guys a policy back to look over and approve and say we're good with.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Chief, if you can explain, because I know that the public and the media was foremost out there with the issue in the parking lane, the fire lane, and the parking citation. If you could address the board and just let them know how you and your company resolved that.
Sure. So this has transpired over the course of about a month. We had a minor non-reportable accident on Jonestown Road with one of the apparatus. We had a driver that merged into the right lane. There was a car in the blind spot, happened to merge into that car, damaged the door on the driver's side of the car. Report was done, everything was taken care of. And then there was a policy subsequently issued about the use of apparatus. And there was another incident with the fire engine parked at Giant in the fire lane. The fire lane is something we've never advocated, and we've maybe lost sight of it because it wasn't a written policy. We've always tried to get the apparatus for pub eds or for trainings or for any sort of business that we were out on. We've always tried to get the apparatus parked either to the rear of the parking lot out of the way or somewhere alongside the building on the sides of the building where it's out of the way but still allows for quick departure. So we've since put together a policy in writing, ran it through the executive board addressing some of the concerns that have came out. The fire lane specifically, security of the vehicles, if at all possible, somebody will stay with the vehicle. But that's not obviously always possible when we do like public eds or some trainings. They require walkthrough of buildings or we go inside of a building. So we've functioned that way for the last 20 years with apparatus and never had any incidents, but we do understand the concern of security of vehicles. So the policy addresses they'll be locked to the best of their ability. If they can't be locked, a driver will stay with the vehicle if at all possible. And if they're out of the vehicle, ideally within sight range of the vehicle so they have an eye on the vehicle in case something were to happen. So like I said, we've since put that into one of our policies. I think ideally the director's mind is a township-wide policy, so all 3 fire companies are on the same page. And I believe they would like input as well, and rightfully so, they should have some input into it. So we feel like it would be better served if it was in the Public Safety Committee.
And Chief, admittedly, from our meeting, you and your members felt that there's probably something you didn't convey openly with some of the younger members, newer members of your department, and you accept the responsibility for that issue with the fire lane.
Yeah, absolutely. All of our, per se, seasoned or older members, it was always conveyed, hey, the parking lane's not an ideal place for apparatus unless it's a last resort or public safety. You know, if we're up there for pub ed or training, they may park in the fire lane to have the equipment available or to show off the equipment. But ideally, we would park somewhere in the parking lot out of the normal way of traffic. I think the Friendship Center is probably a prime example. We go there for pub ed at least twice a year and usually drop Santa Claus off there in the wintertime. And every time we park in the fire lane because there's a reason to be there. But overall, if we're just going somewhere for business, we typically try and park somewhere in the parking lot out of the way. And I don't know, again, we would take the time. I don't want to take up all night of your time. You have a busy agenda. But we would be absolutely thrilled to take the time to educate all of you individually or as a group to how the fire department operates and why we do the things we do. One of the things unique to the fire companies in the township are the live-in program that exists, and kids and adults, I say kids because they're younger than me, but men and women that live at the firehouse and go to college, essentially getting free room and board, and that crew essentially becomes your full-time firefighting crew for the township at all 3 fire companies that are available. Our hours last year show that if you take all the hours that somebody was on station, there's always at least 3 people at the firehouse, which essentially gives you almost career fire protection, a crew of 3 in the station 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, for 0 cost. And that's unheard of. Our response numbers reflect that. Our response times reflect that. We meet the career response times 27% of the time, which for a volunteer fire company is absolutely phenomenal. So we feel like we do a lot of good. If anything, like I said, we failed to educate the township board on why we do what we do, and obviously the public, if they have concerns on where they're seeing apparatus, we would like to entertain the idea of addressing those concerns if they come in. You know, if you guys were happen to receive a complaint, we'd be thrilled if you would take the name off of it and forward it to us or paraphrase it to us and say, hey, we had this complaint come in. Can you identify why this happened or what led to this? And we, to the best of our ability, would try and provide you with everything we could to address any citizen complaints. But I would hope a lot of it is just essentially misunderstanding of why we do what we do.
Well, I think that one of the key elements here is that we now have a public safety director, and this whole issue sort of arose during that period where we were dealing with the issue of the former director resigning and selecting our new director, and I can see marked progress just in the last week. So having leadership at the top here is very important. We have that now. And board members, do we have any specific questions of our firefighters while they are here?
I do.
Go ahead, Mrs. Lindsay.
Yeah, John, you're saying that you're not going to you're going to have somebody there now, they're not going to be unattended, okay? You're going to watch where you're parking, watch what you're doing. So you just implemented this policy because of all this that has arisen in the past month?
Not exactly. We've always tried to park towards the end of the parking lot, but like I said, with newer drivers, we lost sight of that apparently with some of the newer drivers. The 2 times it happened that it was pointed out was a newer driver that's been a driver for about a year. So we've always had unwritten policies. The written policy is new because of a direct result of this. We said, hey, we should probably put this in writing, at least for our company, and hopefully get on board and get the public safety director to put a township-wide policy together.
Because I got pictures from a resident that was forwarded to me out at Planet Fitness. The truck was parked, and there was nobody there with the truck.
No,
it was unattended.
No, I'm sorry. They try and stay within visual sight if they have to leave the truck. So the windows, they're essentially working out, and they look out the windows where they can see the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. And let me just ask you this question.
Sure.
There's no keys to the truck, right? So all you have to do is push a button and the truck starts.
There's a sequence of buttons and switches, yes.
Okay, so it can be very easily stolen because of that?
I would say you would need some fire department knowledge or essentially big truck knowledge, apparatus knowledge to understand how to start it. But no, there are no keys.
Okay, because I'm going to be right up front with you, because of the article that was in the, on Penn Live. I don't get the paper, but I do read Penn Live. I did have a lot of feedback for some residents that were very upset that, you know, the truck was at the gym, you know, it was at Giant, you know, the different things where it's at. So I'm just letting you know that residents are very upset that they feel it should be just used for driver training, and not just riding around getting groceries, you know. And another thing I had was I did a little research on the Homeland Security and the Fire Relief Fund, and we get $100,000 from the Fire Relief Fund. And, you know, if you're not following the policy, which, you know, in the Fire Relief Fund, it says that the truck should be used for personal use, as in going to the grocery store, going to the gym. We could lose that money at the township. And I mean, $100,000 is $100,000.
No, I agree. I'm confused about the numbers. Fireman's Relief comes out of Pennsylvania, out of the Attorney General's office, DCED funding. Is that what you're referring to, the Pennsylvania Fireman's Relief?
I have a letter from the Lower Paxton Township Fireman Relief, and it said in there that $100,000, which we get, okay, that it should not be used for personal use. And I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that $100,000
No, I understand that
that we're
completely.
getting.
Yeah. I think, are you referring to the 100,000 that was put towards the apparatus when it was purchased?
Right,
Okay.
Yeah.
So the township as a whole gets about $360,000 of fireman's relief money that comes out of Department of Economic Development funding.
right.
That gets divided up into 4 quarters. Three of those quarters go to each of the individual fire company
Right.
funds. 1 quarter goes to a general fund. The last purchase of apparatus, there was $100,000 of the general fund put towards each of the 3 capital purchases of the fire apparatus. The ruling in the fireman's relief is essentially that vehicles owned by fireman's relief, titled to fireman's relief, are used for training and emergency responses, essentially. And I think we have a difference of opinion that just, not really a difference, but a misunderstanding of what's considered personal business or routine business for a fire department is essentially where we're at. For us, the only crew available to put a fire out may be the crew that's on station. So if those 5 guys or girls or women or men are going to go to the gym, there's a possibility the fire truck doesn't go anywhere when a fire happens. So they do things as a crew. It's very paramilitary or militaristic where things function as part of a crew. Taking one person out of that equation reduces our effectiveness by 30% based on NIST studies. So if we had 5 people to do all the tasks, the 22 major tasks when we got there, and you take one person out of that equation, we're 30% less effective because of that. So that's why they try and travel as a crew. That's why they do things as a crew. At 5 o'clock, they decide how many people are eating dinner, and they run and get groceries as a crew, and they cook dinner as a crew. If they're gonna go work out, they all go at the same time, so they're available to answer calls as a crew. And the response delay, which is what concerned us and brought this all to light, was if we just blatantly parked the apparatus, said they're not to move except for a fire, and all 5 or 6 or 8 people decided we're going to the gym, there would be no fire protection or no guarantee that those apparatus were gonna get out for a call. Because everything else is a shot in the dark with volunteer fire protection. We can guess that we have 6 guys coming from home or 6 responders coming from home, but the only guaranteed response we have in the volunteer fire service is physical people in the station at the time the alarm goes off. Everything else is a guessing game. So those people we know are available to answer a call. If we send them out of the station, we're reliant on them to respond back to the station to get a piece of apparatus to do whatever critical function we need to do. And that delay could be substantial. And I know, Mrs. Lindsay, you had a fire behind your house 2 years ago in December?
Year ago, December.
A year ago, December. I was at it. I remember seeing you on your back porch, and you saw the effects of fire and how quick it grows. That delay is catastrophic in a fire. The last fire we had on Galleon Street was a garage fire. When the gentleman called 911, there was a fire in the garage. By the time we got there, 7 minutes later, the entire garage was engulfed in flames, and they had 14 calls at the 911 center reporting a house on fire. That's how critical those 6 or 7 minutes are in the world of fire response. And I think that's where the big disagreement or misconception comes up, that they're doing personal business. The business is much easier if they jump in their personal car and go. The apparatus is kind of hard to get around. You gotta find a place to park. You know, so it's not a benefit to our responders to take the apparatus to the gym. It's more a benefit to the community and the citizens to make sure that there's fire protection available, and we're not negligent in leaving them out in the wind with no fire protection, even though we had firefighters.
But if you're out at Planet Fitness, which is in Paxtonia, and you have a call at Union Deposit, that's twice the time to get there. Where if that rig was at the station, you could go there. But now you're clear out in the Paxtonia area.
Sure, our direct response would still be faster than them redirecting to the station to get the apparatus to go to wherever they're going. And that would apply for probably, I'm roughly guesstimating, probably about 85% of our coverage area. It would almost always be faster to go directly with large apparatus, directly to the scene, than it would be to go from wherever they're at back to the firehouse to get the apparatus to redirect to the scene.
And I have another question. When you go out of the county, do you have to have permission from the township to go out of the county with the rig?
Out of the township, actually. There's an ordinance, I'm sorry, a resolution 9710, that spells out exemptions where we don't need approval, but anything else, essentially, we need approval for leaving the township.
Okay, because it got back to me on Facebook that our rig was in Elizabethtown the other Friday night.
Sure, that meets the exemptions. It's a mutual aid standby for a partner that also stands by for us when there's a major emergency. Most notably, when Wyndham Way burnt, they sent a crew of 6 with their apparatus up to cover the township while we were tied up for 5 hours.
Okay.
And we always try to pull mutual aid from a little bit of a distance because.
Because that took the rig out of, I mean, there was other fire companies that were closer down there, and that took the rig out of our township that
Yes.
we might have needed that night.
Yes. It's a mutual aid agreement essentially where if there's a large event that's putting a strain on an individual area, a lot of that area is depleted. So although there's closer fire companies, they are probably most likely also at that call. Wyndham Way is a prime
It was
example.
just a kitchen fire?
I'm not sure. They don't tell us what it is. They just tell
Okay.
us we're requested to stand by at their station.
Right.
Wyndham Way, most notably, was a 3-alarm fire. All the township apparatus was there, as well as most of Susquehanna, Paxtang, and even down as far as Middletown. So it relatively stripped this area. When we hit 3 alarms on a fire, it strips a large portion of the area. So other companies come in to backfill those areas. And it's just a reciprocal agreement that if we have a large fire, they transfer up here. If they have a large fire or something that they need their station filled for, we transfer down there. But it's not out of the county, it's out of the township is the ordinance.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I just have a question of clarification, that when you were addressing Mrs. Lindsay's questions, you said early on, and I think this is a direct quote, that there were always 3 people in the firehouse. Now, is that true, or are all of them going to Planet Fitness or to dinner or to the other places, and there is no one at the firehouse during that period of time?
Our staffing numbers were implemented to track how many people we have available on station to respond to calls. Those numbers for last year came out to 27,000 hours and some odd change. Essentially, so what that means is when they log in the book and say, I was here or I'm here from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock, the next person signs in, they're there from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock. We added all those hours up to show how many hours people were donating essentially and staying on station to cover responses. That 3-person number is all those hours just divided out towards a 24-hour
So
day.
that what you're saying, the 3 people that are always the firehouse is simply a statistical number? That
Yeah,
doesn't
it's a-
mean in
yes.
reality there are 3 people there?
No, some days there was
As
6.
long as I know it's a mean statistical number.
Yeah, some days there may be 6, and some days there may be less, and some days there may be more. Yes, sir.
I assume that because you're using that statistical number, that is because there actually isn't someone there, because you're justifying why you have the truck and all of your staff somewhere else.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
You're using a mean statistical number of 3 people being at the firehouse at all times. That is simply a mean statistical number, when in reality, there may not be, because they're all together at Planet Fitness or wherever. Yeah, I think that would be an accurate statement, correct?
Yes and no. I probably misspoke when I said at the firehouse. The hours that are logged means they were putting time in for the Colonial Park Fire Company. They may have been running to pick up stuff that was needed for supplies, or they may have been running errands and dropping paperwork off the township. I signed in today and I'm over here. So we log the hours that were donated essentially. It doesn't mean they were on station that entire time. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to collect the facts. And when you made the statement, 3 people are in the firehouse at all times. Now I'm hearing you say that's a statistical number. It's a mean. I understand that. So I'm just getting a confirmation that there are times when there is no one there, because those people are all on the truck at Planet Fitness or wherever. So, and that's a possibility, correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted a clarification.
Chief Fogg, can you tell me, the guys that live at the firehouse, do they work?
Yes, they're all either employed or in school.
Okay.
It's a requirement of the policy to be there as either employment or attending school on a more than part-time basis, essentially more than 12 credits.
So if they're coming back from work or coming back from school, could they maybe stop at the grocery store before they get to the firehouse, instead of everybody having to go at one time and take the truck?
They could. They typically don't know who's in for dinner until closer to dinner time. They don't know who's around and who has plans for the day until they get back and make a plan for the day.
I'm just concerned because it's a new truck and you're putting a lot of miles on it. You know, we spent a lot of money on the 3 new rigs, that we bought last year, so we'd like to let them last a little bit longer. And the gas, the gas that you're using to be running here and running there. And you're saying about this the past month. I'll be right up front with you. I noticed this back October, November, December. I don't work on Mondays, and I'm out and about in the township. And I said to my husband, I'm seeing our new rig out a lot. I said, I wonder what's going on. I said this before this even came alight, So people are noticing that the fire truck, you just got that truck, September, October, and it's had 2 accidents already,
We got it in April and put it in service in August. I think the 13th, we actually brought it over for a
Right,
tour.
was it August? I
think
thought
it
it was
was
September,
August.
October. We put it in service, so.
Certainly.
Okay.
One of the things that ties into the new one being out more and about than it normally is training on the new vehicle to make sure people are comfortable driving it. I'm an advocate that any time the vehicle is moving and somebody is driving it, that makes them a better driver, regardless of why they're driving it. I would much rather have a guy driving a fire truck that drove it 100 times that year than didn't drive it at all and just jumped in it at 2 o'clock in the morning because the pager went off for a house fire. I think that makes them better at their job the more often they do it. And I said it came up a month ago. I meant to our attention. We got attention of it about a month ago. I think it was February 10th or 11th. I was actually in Cancun on vacation, ironically. So I meant it came to our attention about a month
Right.
ago.
Okay. That's all I have, Chairman.
Do any other members, Mr. Hawk, Mr. Judd, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I'm looking forward to you guys sitting down with the Public Safety Committee and working with the new director and looking to see what comes out of that. You've got 2 supervisors up here who spent a lot of years on the Public Safety Committee back when they used to let civilians on it. So
They don't
we
do
have
that
a
anymore.
we have a little bit of insight as far as anybody can in street clothes. And so I'll let you guys work it out. Obviously, when it's taxpayer involvement, when they buy the equipment or the apparatus, we have a responsibility, and that's just the way it is,
Absolutely.
And so we will, my feeling is I have a lot of confidence in that committee. I think hopefully going forward there'll be more communication so that things like this are taken care of well before tickets are being written and all that stuff. Because my ultimate goal is to raise awareness in the community about our fire companies. I think people are really, ill-informed as far as who's been keeping the safety all these years. I think they have so much confidence that someone's nearby and can respond, fire and EMS, that it just doesn't come up that much, and that's a good thing. But ultimately, it is something that I would like to make an effort to just raise the profile of our volunteers, and so people understand all the work that goes into it, understands how much municipalities across the state rely on it, and how many billions of dollars over the years would be spent by taxpayers if we had to go to paid departments full-time. So I'm looking forward to that. This is something we got to work through because we do have responsibility for the taxpayers, and make sure that it's cleared up however it's cleared up, and there's a clear policy, and I'm looking forward to hearing back from the committee as far as how that works out, and then we can move on to my next goal, which is to just raise your profile and make sure people understand that how we got this township reputation through all these years of being a place with real high quality public safety. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. Well, welcome to the board. We encourage all of you to come over anytime. We would love to talk and not tie up your night when you have a lot of things on the agenda about what we do and why we do it. We encourage that conversation. And I think the lack of problems have led to some of the miscommunication and lack of conversation because we very rarely, like you said, have any issues. Everybody just takes it as it's there.
And
public safety is there.
Take advantage of the Public Safety Committee. That's why it's there.
Yep.
When I got my Dear John letter from the township many years ago. I assumed it's okay. They know what they're doing. The right people were in that room. Fire, the police chief, the public safety director, the chiefs, and the EMS. So take advantage of it. Use that communication pipeline. That's why it's there. And then we'll go from there.
I'm going to keep my comments pretty short, but basically I support what Mr. Judge said, and we have an exciting, very willing director, and this is a great opportunity for the two of you to get together, know each other, and you're going to have situations that will pop up periodically, and this is a good opportunity to work out good relationships with each other and solve problems. And that's what it's all about, is solving problems.
Does that mean you need to go?
I appreciate the end of your comments, but we actually have a reported house fire, so.
I wish all agenda items would end like that.
Thank you very much for being here. We
Thank you for
appreciate
your
it.
time.
Thank you.
Be safe, Chief.
Well, that brought an end to the to the conversation in a hurry. But we understand that the issue will now be taken up by the Public Safety Committee, and which includes the chiefs and the presidents of all three fire companies and our Public Safety Director, and you all can come back with a recommended policy for us,
Yes, sir.
or at least some policy recommendations.
Okay, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time, you and Mr. Wolf, for meeting with the fire department earlier this week, or last week, I guess it was, and moving this forward. So,
I have a question.
yes. Oh. I have a question. Hold on. Come up to the podium, please, to ask the question, then we'll. And state your name and address.
I'm Bill Payne. I'm the chief of Linglestown Fire Company. Mm-hmm. And you guys are making this very hard to do my job. Because I got this memo, and so did Paxtonia Fire Company, about what happens when we take fire trucks out, okay?
When did you receive the memo?
I received this on the 14th, the day after the accident happened with Colonial Park's fire truck, okay? So this was emailed to me. So I go back and tell my membership, I don't agree with all of this policy. I agree with some of it, but I don't agree with all of this policy. But I go back and tell my membership, we're not allowed to drive the fire trucks until we have a public safety meeting, which I can get scheduled, which at the time was a little bit of a mess going on right now. So we hire a new public safety director, but I'm enforcing this policy that was given to me. So was Paxtonia Fire Company. They were enforcing the policy that was given to me. On this policy at the bottom, it clearly states that anybody that violates this policy, their driving privileges will be suspended.
Who provided you with that memo?
This came from Captain Zerby, Rich Needham, and Public Safety Dave Spots at the time, because he was still in charge. Okay? So I enforced this policy. My membership's coming to me and telling me, hey, Chief, their rig's over at Planet Fitness. Hey, Chief, their rig's out at Buffalo Wild Wings. Hey, Chief, their rig's driving up and down 22, up and down Linglestown Road. Hey, Chief, their vehicle's out at Sheetz at midnight. Hey, guys, I don't know what to tell you. What you show me tonight, the Board of Supervisors, I'll give Gary and Robin a little credit for that, but what you show me tonight is I'd rather come in here and break your rules and beg for your forgiveness than do your rules. And that's what I'm going to go back and tell my membership. Guys, these rules are meant to be broken, and what we'll do is we'll beg for forgiveness when we're caught. Now, I want to do a little history lesson for you guys, because I've been fire chief for 11 years. Okay, some of you have served on the Public Safety Committee before me.
Thank you for breaking the rules. I respect that. Thank you.
So, what I have a problem with is, okay, I watched the fire chief tell you folks to go somewhere that wasn't nice, and nothing was done. Okay? The way he talked to you and addressed you folks was embarrassing at all ends. Okay? What happened here tonight with Colonial Park Fire Company and what's happened the last month upsets me to no end. But meanwhile, I sit over there at Linglestown and I do it right all the time. And I don't think any of you supervisors can say different. We've always done the right thing and done it the right way. And I've never asked for any more, and I know I get the same as what they get. But this is ridiculous. You guys don't make a stand. You guys are pushing it back to the Public Safety Committee. We're going to sit in that meeting and we're going to argue for an hour of my life I can't get back that I've
Billy?
been doing for 11 years, and we
Billy?
just don't get anything done.
I'm going to agree with you, and I am going to agree with you. I don't think it should go back to the Public Safety Committee.
No.
Well, I'm going to disagree.
Press these
I'm going to
issues.
take strong disagreement with that. Having served as the first chairman of the Public Safety Committee when it was first formed, the reason the Public Safety Committee was formed was for just situations like this, so that when issues arose, we would have an appropriate forum wherein all interested parties and stakeholders would be represented, and we could have a calm and serious discussion about what policy should be. That is the purpose of the Public Safety Committee.
But what I'm saying to you is, if you're not going to enforce this one right now for 30 days, then we're going to go back to
Nobody
it.
said we weren't enforcing that for 30 days. What we said was we're going to have the Public Safety Committee sit down, because my understanding of it in talking with various firefighters is that we essentially have 3 different policies among the 3 different fire departments. And what we need to do is to come up with a township policy for township purchased apparatus that will be consistently applied across all 3 volunteer fire departments. So we are trying to get to where you want us to be. Now, you can disagree with how we're going to get there, but that is where we're headed. One uniform policy that we all at least accept, if not agree with, and then we will enforce that policy. Right now, there is not a policy really to enforce, other than something that was put out by a couple of members of the police department at any given point in time.
Sir, your public safety director's name's at the top of the list. He was on it.
Well,
No, not well. He was the public safety director at the time,
I
sir.
said, well, we have had some changes there.
I understand that.
There
but
are
at the time
reasons.
this memo was put out, he
There
wasn't.
are reasons for those changes. We now have a new public safety director, who I might point out is a volunteer fire chief himself. Therefore, he probably understands, well, not probably, I know he understands better than any member of this board what is involved. And we have policies that differ among the 3 departments, and the Public Safety Committee is the appropriate venue for those differences to be discussed and hopefully ironed out. And, while it might take some time for us to do that, in order for all stakeholders to be heard and for us to have a thorough review of the policy, that is the direction that we are going to go.
I just want to make one more point, and I'll walk away, I promise you.
You don't need to walk away. We're willing to hear what you have to say, but you also
I'm too
need to
emotional right now
understand
to
where
talk
we're
about
coming
this.
from as well.
But my question is, the thing that brought this whole thing to light, really the final straw was the accident on 22.
Yes.
Okay? So now I understand the gentleman that was driving the fire truck at the time was under driver training. He was driver training that fire truck to learn how to drive it, right? That's what we were given, the information. Now, the information I was given, he was driver training. That's not true?
No, he had completed all of his driving training previously.
So when was he approved to be the driver on the rig? 5 days after the accident? Was what I was told.
I don't know that, but we've submitted all of that to the
Okay.
police department as part of their request.
So, all right, well then I'm done. Like I said, what I want is, I'm begging for it. I begged the last public safety director when I had a one-on-one conversation with it. I want some discipline. I want somebody to have some teeth and say, this is not the way we do business, and here's the way it's gonna be. I'm hoping, I pray to God, sir, that is you. I beg for it,
Chief, can I ask you a favor?
so.
Can I ask you a
I'm done.
favor?
Sure.
Because you were very honest, and very direct about what you're saying. My request is, give us a little bit of time. This just got dropped into our laps, just talking as a new member. We just got a new public safety director. As the board, we received word of this, I think, on a Tuesday. It was in a newspaper a couple days later. And we've been playing catch up ever since. I would just ask you to hold your judgment a little bit. Let us get through this. In
11
the
years,
end,
I've been
there
doing
will
it for 11
be,
years, sir. I will hold it for a couple more months.
We haven't been here for the last 11 years.
I know, but I keep getting promised that
and
things
our
will
new public safety director hasn't even been here for 11 days. So,
and my other request is, I said before, people take it for granted. They don't think about what goes into public safety and fire safety. And what now the one time it's getting into the news, they're seeing the police writing tickets for the firefighters. They're going to see one fire chief criticizing another fire company. And as far as the taxpayers go, we're all on the same side. Maybe that's naive, but that's how they see it. We're all on the same side. And we can get through this. And you deserve answers. You deserve a clear policy. You deserve an open line of communication where you're not going to have to explode at a meeting or feel that you're not being, there's not communication. That shouldn't happen. But we just got the public safety director. All right, just give us a little bit of time, and then
look,
you can let us have it.
we want what you're asking for. What we need to do is go through the appropriate process to get to where you want us to be. And we hear what you're saying, and we want to get there. Just give us a little bit of time to get to that point.
I think.
And you will have complete input into the process as a member of the Public Safety Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I think the letter that was sent out, and we did get a copy of that, I think that all three fire companies should be abiding by that letter until the public safety meeting makes a recommendation. And if you only have two that are abiding by it and one's not, that's not fair.
Mr. Director?
If I may, I did address that with Chief Fogg. And Chief, I'd like to see you before you take, I know you're upset. I'd like to talk to you and introduce myself. But we did address that. And between now and the time that the Public Safety Committee meets and we establish a policy, the Colonial Park Fire Department understands that the policy is in effect, that no personal use. Right. The definition of that is ever moving, but no personal use for such as groceries, gym runs, and things like that until we can work out a township policy. Good. And for Chief Payne and anyone else, if that becomes an issue and there's more instances where there's a violation of that, it has to be directed to me so that I can deal with it immediately. We're working towards what I think Chief Payne wants. I'm a big advocate of township-wide policies. If the township's supporting 3 fire departments, we're gonna continue to work in that direction. And I've heard that that's been difficult in the past, but it's my job at the direction of this board to make sure that happens. And I look forward to working with all of them to do that.
One thing that this policy should include is something you just touched on, which is a definition of what is personal use and what is appropriate use of equipment for fire department purposes. Because the words personal use can have different meanings to different people, and apparently do. So we need to define what that is very clearly.
Yes, sir.
And I think too, Director Kashiba, I think when the policy goes into effect, everybody must follow it. Not just 2 of them, all 3 fire companies must follow it.
Without a doubt, I believe that it's going to be binding when we talk about, and if 2 of the 3, for instance, if 2 of the 3 fire departments are not interested or are interested in doing the construction of the policy and one doesn't come to the table, then shame on them. At the end of the day, we're going to institute a policy through me with the understanding of the board that it's a township-wide policy that will be in effect and binding.
And I'm not anti-volunteer. I was born and raised in the Paxtonia Fire Company. I volunteered for Lower Paxton Ambulance Association back when it was all volunteer. But everybody has to be compliant. So I'm just asking that everybody be compliant when this finally, and I think right now, like you said they are, I hope they are, that everybody is following the rules because the letter did go out.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, you had some comments. Would you please come to the podium so that we can...
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to offer some information, not necessarily in rebuttal, but to coincide with some of the discussion that just occurred. First of all, I'd like to provide you with some information on the qualifications of the driver that was just impugned here a few minutes ago. He is certified by an international pro board as an operator of that apparatus, which many of our drivers and operators are, for whether it be an engine, a ladder, etc. For that engine, he was pro board certified. He has gone through annual emergency vehicle operations training as is required in your previous resolution for drivers in the township. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that resolution, but he was in full compliance with it. He had behind the wheel training on other pieces of apparatus prior, in that particular piece extensive, and I don't know exactly what the hours were, but I believe they were at least 10 hours behind the wheel in that particular piece of apparatus. So it was not necessarily that he was not qualified in that piece. However, whether they were using it for driver training at that period of time or not, I can't necessarily speak to that. But I will tell you that he was more than qualified as to what the standards of the township are. He was qualified to a consensus standard from an international level as well, which we don't require of all of our township personnel, but we do require of our members at least firefighter 1 certification. We encourage all other levels as well, such as driver operator that this individual had. I get the sense that there was a feeling as though we wish to be insubordinate with your particular communication that came to us. It was not meant to be insubordinate. But we did question whether or not there was good thought process put into it, especially in light of the fact that previous resolutions that governed this kind of operation definitely had input from the fire companies. You can tell by what is included within them. And normally a type of policy that's put in place by management by memo type of situation is not what we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing the latter, like the resolution, which would govern such situations. This happened less than a week after a public safety committee meeting where and I sat there myself, there was absolutely no concerns raised by anyone in that meeting about the operation of fire apparatus within the township. So I'll be honest with you, it came as a major surprise to us that this concern came out less than a week after that, when, just as you have indicated previously, Mr. Judd, the Public Safety Committee was the perfect venue to entertain such a discussion. And if these concerns were raised well into last year, we had no idea how this came about so quickly without any type of communication with us previous that there was a potential
And
issue.
that's fine. Let's not look back anymore.
Yeah, right.
Let's just look forward and clean it up. You
Look-
know, I think we got a good plan for.
We are looking forward to the Public Safety Committee meeting, and we wish to work with all the other companies in working out these concerns. Please do not take anything that we did as some intention of insubordination. That was not it at all. It was only out of the thought process of above and beyond anything else. Our people were taught to do no harm. And we felt as though in this particular instance, harm could become to the residents based on delayed responses that could occur after the initiation of that.
Let me
Okay,
ask you.
the bottom line here is, and we can debate this for a long time here tonight, but the bottom line is we lack a comprehensive policy for how to govern the use of apparatus. It has unfortunately come to our attention in a manner that I don't think any of us would have preferred that it come to our attention. And I think that Chief Payne is correct. At the end of the day, whatever the policy is, everybody's going to have buy-in and everybody's going to have to adhere to the policy, but that the Public Safety Committee needs to review it and everybody have their say, everybody have their input, everybody be heard, and then the recommendations come to us. And I think that's it's unfortunately going to take a few weeks to accomplish, but I think it's a fair process.
And we are in full support of that course of action.
And at the end, we're going to need Colonial Park, Lingelstown, and Paxtonia to all be on board and then abide by what the policy is. And the Public Safety Director will be in charge of enforcing it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else for me?
I have a question for the director.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us, and maybe you don't have it fashioned yet, but an action plan of how soon you will be able to convene this meeting, when you anticipate of being able to put something together and bring your recommendation back to us?
My intent is to get with Mr. Wolf and get the special notice for the special meeting posted. And as soon as we can have that meeting carried out, but ultimately, I do not want to see this go beyond 30 days.
Thank you.
At that special meeting. And we'll have an agenda at that meeting to discuss the policy. And when we exit that meeting, I will have all the information. Though it won't be in writing, it'll be distributed to them in writing after that meeting under my direction. So we'll have a general consensus from all three companies on what it is. I'll formulate that response to them and to all of you at a very short period of time later, and then issue the policy out.
Thank you for that outline of your plan.
Does the board have any additional questions of the director?
I hope you can work it out.
I know from experience, things can be difficult.
Attended those public safety meetings years ago. I hope you can work it out.
I can remember some of those meetings going to after midnight. And it was especially interesting the first time we divvied up who got what apparatus first. That took a little bit of discussion, and we had some late meetings, but I'm confident that everybody involved has the best interest of the township at heart.
Yes,
And
sir.
Y'all will come back to us with a recommendation.
All right, thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Board.
Okay. Let us now move to review of a proposed scope of work for the 2018 MS4 services as provided by HRG Inc. And Aaron, is Aaron here? Aaron, how are you doing this evening? And if you could pronounce your last name for us so I don't get it wrong.
I'll be happy to. I'm Erin Latavik. I'm an engineer with
you.
HRG. Did the manager want to say anything first?
I can briefly start.
Okay.
Hi, Aaron. Board members, Lower Paxton Township uses the services of Herbert Willard and Grubik, not only as its township engineer, but also to provide us with specific MS4 services, our municipal stormwater system services. And those services have been expanded as we implement our Chesapeake Bay, what's
Pollutant reduction plan.
pollution reduction plan, and our Paxton Creek TMDL plan. And HRG has been a significant component part of plan preparation for both the Bay and also Paxton Creek, as well as our overall township MS4 program. And believe me, that's something that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to a lot of people. Suffice it to say that not only are we required in Lower Paxton Township to maintain our storm water system, we're also required to reduce pollution which exists in the form of sediment that affects nitrogen and phosphorus in the waterways of the Commonwealth. And in Lower Paxton Township, that's Beaver Creek, Paxton Creek, Spring Creek, and all the tributaries that connect to them. Aaron is here to describe to us the services that HRG will provide to us in regard to the MS4 program for 2018. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. So generally, MS4, for those of you who haven't heard my presentation last couple years, is a water quality permit. The township has had an MS4 permit since 2003, so we're on 15 years of permit implementation. The permit requirements have evolved over time. Last year, we assisted the township in supplying a permit application and pollutant reduction plan to DEP for review. That continues to be under review. But nonetheless, new permit conditions come into effect on Friday this week. And in response to the evolution of permit requirements, township staff's interest in continuing to use this as a resource, we put together this confirmation of assignment to lay out the types of activities that we see that township staff calling upon us for. So the idea here is that this is an on-call at staff's request type contract with certain allocation of hours for certain types of tasks that we're anticipating they'll need assistance with. So for example, on page 1, there is an annual report that's required each year. Your stormwater technician is in the audience this evening, Randy Allen. The request was for HRG to do the last annual report for the last permit term, and then carrying forward, township staff will likely take on that task. So that's a continuation of what we've done the last 4 years. The permit is for a 5-year period of time. Then on page 2, there are some tasks outlined related to the minimum control measures, which are part of the required stormwater program within the MS4 permit. So they're basically routine items that we've assisted the township with on the last couple years. MCMs 1 and 2 are for public education and participation. To the extent that we create documents for all of our clients, we'll provide them to you for inclusion in various media outlets. Outfall inspections, MCM number 3, are a very significant labor lift for township staff. So routinely we'll assist Randy and his colleagues on outfall inspections. I understand that there may be an interest in hiring some interns this summer to assist with that. But in the meantime, we do have a couple hours, 45 hours in there to support outfall inspections through the course of the year. One reason why there's an allocation of hours as well is because when water is viewed at an outfall during dry weather, there really shouldn't be any storm water in the storm sewer system 3 days after it's rained. So the idea there is if there's water, it does need to be tested to confirm that there's nothing illegal going through the system. Currently, the township does not have that kit to be able to test the water. We do. We're going to provide a spec to the township staff to buy that kit eventually this year, but in the meantime, we can be called upon to provide that service if needed.
Erin, can I just interrupt you?
Sure
The
thing.
interns, is that with HRG or with the township?
It's not fully fleshed out yet, but they
Okay.
would be township employees from what I understand.
Oh, okay, just asking.
MCM number 5 is related to post-construction stormwater management. So when land development projects go through the process and are constructed, there are stormwater best management practices, detention basins, infiltration basins, things of that nature that owners are required to operate and maintain. The township needs to have a plan, a program in place to basically document that owners are doing what they should be. And that program needs a little bit of work. So we do have hours included in here to help the township get that program better in compliance with the permit requirements so that long-term that can be implemented in-house. MCM number 6 is related to public works training. We have generally provided training materials to township staff in the past and have led presentations. We anticipate needing to continue to do that. And then there's a general assistance task there, partially because of the random questions that we'll get whenever permits change and maybe interpretation of definitions changes, but also where we are in our universe can be guided by grant applications these days because construction projects need to happen, small initiatives may come up from different organizations, and there may be a need for the township to solicit grant funding. We're seeing that that's very common when it comes to MS4 permit implementation. So we have an allocation of hours in there to provide support to staff on general permit questions and then also grant application support when requested. So that's the stormwater permit programming side of it. It's the day-to-day stuff that impacts township staff. There's another leg of the permit that's new this year, which is the pollutant reduction plan that your manager mentioned. There are a number of projects that have been identified in the joint plan that the township submitted along with Susquehanna Township and Water last year. There are a few what we're calling early action projects that are high priority for Lower Paxton. One of them is the Stonebridge Apartments property. It's located across the street from the Colonial Park Mall. They happen to have a stream that runs right through their property and it's eroding. That's exactly the target of the Paxton Creek TMDL goals. Just a week ago, Randy Allen and I sat down with one of the staff from the management company, explained to them some of the goals of the plan, township's interest in doing some work on their property and the need to obtain easements. And we received very favorable feedback indicating that this is a project worth continuing on with, again, with the idea of soliciting grant funding to implement a stream restoration project on their property. So we do have a separate item in there to put together a sketch plan detailing preliminary improvements, how much pollutant reduction sediment credit we would anticipate from that project, and I'm not sure it specifically says that, but we would certainly provide a preliminary cost estimate so that it would support a grant application that township staff may be interested in. So as I mentioned, the scope is intended to be rigid but flexible. Rigid meaning we know the goals that need to be implemented this year, a couple milestones we need to achieve, but it's really going to be up to township staff to call upon us as much as they feel that they need to. So to provide them some direction, we thought we'd get a confirmation of assignment in front of you so you understood the level of effort that may be needed this year. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm sorry, for board members' information, why don't you review the expected cost for services?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So for the MS4 technical assistance lines, all of the initial tasks I had lined out, there's an estimate of $27,910 there. Again, time materials basis. The pollutant reduction plan implementation, basically the sketch plan, sediment calculation, and cost estimate for Stonebridge Apartments has a value of $4,800. So should the entire scope be approved, it'd be a total of $32,710 for the 2018 permit year. The permit year runs from Friday, March 16th this year until March 15th of next year, which is in line with, unfortunately, the permit cycle.
Aaron, I have a question. I just by virtue of the fact that you've separated the two amounts, I'm assuming, and I don't like to assume anything, but based on what you have provided us in written documentation on the pollutant reduction plan implementation, it obviously has a higher priority, and so therefore I'm assuming you separated it because it has a high priority and you're recommending that one be done first.
That is the next target. Yes, based
Otherwise,
upon
I would
staff's
assume that you would have just lumped them together, but when I read the narrative, I made the assumption that that has a high priority. That's why you bifurcated the amounts of the funding or the request for the study and the amounts.
The reason, another reason why it's separated is because of the skill set that's needed. The Stonebridge Apartments task is more of an engineering task, where the other portions are more consulting. It's really, MS4 really isn't engineering, unfortunately.
I assume also it has more impact because of the apartments that are already there and the existence of water erosion and whatever goes on in that.
Correct. Yeah. And since it could be a joint project with the other two entities that are participating in the pollutant reduction plan, I thought it would be valuable for you to understand how much you've spent on implementing
To separate,
that plan.
even though that they may interface.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
In the old days, no one would have cared because that was just part of the country club. It was the golf course where that stream ran through.
Any additional questions or comments from board members?
Can we take action?
I think the one thing that sticks out in my mind, Aaron, is that, your task number one is public education, because a lot of people really don't understand stormwater, and we're still wrestling with it. But at the same time, you're willing to come in with our staff with training so that we can adequately answer those kinds of questions.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's going to be extremely important as we implement, because there's going to be a cost involved. And they don't understand that aspect of it. So that's another issue. But
that's why my presentations tend to be repetitive, because I see a new face and I need to educate them.
Mr. Wolf, are you asking us for consensus to place it on Tuesday night's agenda?
Either that or act on it this evening.
Okay, I wasn't certain whether you were asking for action or whether in fact you were asking to
If
place.
you're comfortable.
Well, is it a sense of the board that everybody is comfortable?
Mr.
In
Chair?
which case, do you have a question, Mr. Judd?
No.
No.
Mr.
In which
Chairman?
case, motion.
I'll move to accept the scope of work for 2018 MS4 services as provided by HRG Inc. in the amount of the two amounts, one in the amount of the $27,910 for the MS4 tech assistance and $4,800 for the pollutant reduction plan implementation as presented by Ms. Latavik.
I support the motion. I'll second it.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept the proposed scope of work for the 2018 MS4 services as provided by HRG and associated costs. Is there any additional comment or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And I hear no nays. So thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron.
Item 6 has been removed from the agenda. because the individuals involved are not ready yet to make a presentation. So we will then move to item number 7, and this is review of a draft request for proposals for building code plan review and inspection services, involving a bit of a change in how we do business. Good evening, Mrs. Zerbe.
Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, and I have, please forgive me, I keep forgetting to do this. And at the same time, it is necessary because we have new board members. Randy Allen is the Lower Paxton Township's engineering field technician who's working primarily in stormwater. And Randy is here tonight to not only hear Aaron's participation, but to also briefly say hello to you. So,
okay.
I'm sorry, Randy, I'm putting you on the spot, but I keep forgetting to do this.
That's
Good
fine.
evening.
Randy Allen, I guess engineering field technician, also the MS4 coordinator, if you will, and been trying to implement the MS4 program and get it moving ahead a little bit stronger than what it had been in the past. And feel free to give me a call anytime you have questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Mr. Wolf, do we have any other introductions?
Not right now.
Not right now? Okay, so with that, Amanda.
You received a very rough draft in your packets for a request for proposal to fulfill the duties and requirements of a certified building inspector that will meet the requirements of an opt-in township under the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code. Dan Slatt, who has been one of the 2 inspectors for the township, is retiring at the end of April after 15 years with the township. Lower Paxton currently utilizes a third-party agency for all commercial reviews and inspections. And this RFP is simply to expand the use of a third-party agency to include some residential review and inspections, as well as the continuation of the commercial reviews. In 2017, the building department issued 79 commercial permits that were reviewed and inspected by the third-party agency, and there were 686 residential permits and plumbing permits that were reviewed and inspected by the 2 Lower Paxton building inspectors. A small number of those residential permits did go to the third-party agency because of the time limitations that are involved under the Pennsylvania Uniform Construction Code. So basically, this RFP is due to the change in service that we're requiring now with one of the inspectors leaving and the amount of permits that would be left for one inspector to handle. Currently, the building department fees are adequate to cover what we anticipate being the increase for the review and inspections. And we brought this to you for any feedback that the board may have.
Yes, board members, let me add that this is a very rough draft of an RFP. The services to be provided start at the bottom of page 3 and are communicated there at the top of page 4. Much of the rest of the RFP is similar to any other RFP that this township has issued, and this in fact was based upon the comprehensive plan RFP. One thing that I would like to point out to the board, and this is just a board decision at this point, but this RFP is proposed at this point in time to be managed by a committee in section 1.02 Township Consultant Selection Committee, and the Board of Supervisors, by what is drafted here, and you can change this if you desire, could appoint the Township Planning Commission to be its consultant selection committee. You did the comprehensive plan that way, and the Planning Commission is familiar with the process, and the Planning Commission works directly with Community Development Department staff. Conversely, the Board of Supervisors could be the consultant selection committee too. You've done that in the past as well. So you have a format for either, and that's one thing before we issue the RFP I'll need direction on.
Right. Any thoughts from the board as to whether we wish the Planning Commission to handle this or whether the board would like to do it directly?
Just a question. Have we had, and I don't know that we have, but I'm asking, have we had any difficulty, or what are the strengths and weaknesses, I get at my bottom line, to maintaining the planning commissions as the selection committee? if we've not had any difficulties and it's worked successfully,
Have they
why
ever
wouldn't
done
we
this
move
before?
forward?
They did it for the comprehensive plan.
Right.
I'm not sure I understand the,
So they're the one that hired Charlie?
If he's asking us to consider changing that, and I'm just saying, do we need to change it if it has been working successfully? I don't
well, it has worked in another context very successfully.
right.
And I think the first policy decision to be made is, do we wish to go this direction and issue this RFP and essentially contract out this service that has been provided in-house? So if it is the board's decision that we are going to contract out, then
I think I want to be involved.
I agree.
do we have agreement that we should contract out as opposed to handling this in-house? Of course, we'll see what the RFPs are till we see what the total cost is before we have to make a final decision.
Right, ultimately, we have to have something on which to base our decision.
Yes.
But I'd like to examine it, and I guess that requires soliciting.
Soliciting bids.
Yeah, and yeah.
Okay, so having decided that we do in fact want to solicit bids, do we wish to have the proposals reviewed by the Planning Commission, as we have done with the comprehensive plan? And that appears to have unfolded very successfully, if the meeting last Thursday night was any indication. Or would the board prefer to handle it ourselves?
In just my opinion, I would prefer to handle it ourselves. That's just my opinion.
Any other thoughts? Does anybody disagree with Mrs. Lindsay? Let's take that approach.
What will this entail? What are we going to do? Yeah, what does it
Board
entail?
members, you'll probably get, Amanda, you so far have identified 5 prospective respondents. It would at least require an interview of, if not all 5, a short list of 3. Interview process would take a full evening. Plus the time involved in reviewing the packets of information in advance and then the decision-making process.
Well, the only thing I've heard so far is a recommendation by Mrs. Lindsay that we handle it through the Board of Supervisors as opposed to the Planning Commission. Does anybody wish to speak in opposition to that idea?
I just think it's a very important part of our community development, and I think we should be involved in it.
Well, hearing no opposition, Mr. Wolf, I think that we'll make that something that will be reviewed by the Board of Supervisors then.
Perfect.
I'll support that.
Do we need any other decision points on this document?
Mr. Steiniger, I had a question in regard to the applicable state regulations that apply to this, because I believe it's more than just a second-class township code, and I did ask Steve to look at that for me today.
Yeah, there are really no specific statutory provisions in the Pennsylvania Construction Code Act or the regulations, but obviously all the people have to be certified. Whoever gets hired, they have to be certified. The third-party provider has to have its own certification in addition to all the people that work for it. The code contemplates that you can have one third party or 2 or more, depending upon what your needs are. So you could actually, if you have 5 submissions, you could decide to make them all third-party providers for the township. And then they would just, of course, get paid based upon how many inspections or plan reviews they actually do. But other than that, there really are no particular rules with regard to this, other than it's going through an RFP process. And this is a process that, in a request for proposal, that it's negotiable. It's not a competitive sealed bid, and you can interview everybody. You can negotiate with them on price, but that's really all the rules that there are.
And at the end of the day, any final agreement would be reviewable by you and by us before we sign off on it?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other points, Mr. Wolf?
Other than the fact, is the board okay if we put this into a final form and issue it?
I think we're ready.
Okay.
I believe you have agreement.
Thank you.
Just took them a while.
Well, that's okay. That's why we have workshop meetings.
Right.
Amanda, do you wish to say anything else about the process, or does that conclude your report?
That concludes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. We would now like to have our new communications director, Leanne Urban, come forward, and we're going to have a review of practices for public access to our agenda content, something that has been the topic of public comment and discussion by the board for a number of months now. So, Mr. Wolf and Ms. Urban.
George, you want to say it?
Go ahead.
So basically, I just want to make sure that all the supervisors are on the same page as far as what you would like to see attached to each agenda that's made available to the public. It has been discussed, but sometimes there are sensitive items, whether it's personnel issues, that can't be attached to the agendas. I want your permission, number one, to make that decision, for it to be okay that certain things.
Everything that's legal.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, unless it is specifically prohibited from law, it's public information, in my view. I think that's what you're saying, Chris.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I just want approval that all 5 supervisors are okay with that, and that I can move forward with that for Tuesday's meeting.
And when you post this on the website, and folks go and they read the electronic version of this, they'll be able to write in the agenda item, click on a hyperlink that will send them to the relevant, because we've had public comment in the past that individuals would like to read over the information before they come to the board meeting, then it's put up on the screen and you only have a minute or two. So that would then be available to anybody and everybody who wants to click on it and read the supporting documentation prior to the meeting.
Correct, and that will only be available on the township website. It will not be on any of our social media. It will not be on Nextdoor. Just the website will have those valid click-throughs.
That's good.
But the social media could.
Has the agenda.
The social media would have the agenda, and it would have a statement that you can get complete additional by going to our website.
Exactly.
Right. And
Yep.
to be clear, these are things that are these are available to the board. We're not reinventing the wheel. You're not going out and having to dig up new pieces of information. These are things that we use as a resource.
Correct.
And there's no legal reason to not make them public and something like that.
Board members, and that is true, there are some issues that you should be aware of. The agenda is always posted Friday before, unless there's technical difficulty. But we post board documents to that agenda. This afternoon, I actually posted these talking points and a PowerPoint presentation. So the documents that go with agenda items don't always show up on the Friday before.
Right.
And then I'd like to ask, Steve, I mean, for instance, I know that, minutes aren't subject to the right to know law until they're approved. So how do you, is there any special way to handle minutes?
I think there's a time limit on that, though. If they're not available within 30 days, I think then you can stamp them as draft, and then they could be available.
Okay. Sounds good.
And those are already publicly available when they're approved.
When they're approved, yes.
Approved, yeah.
But my question was the fact that when we post on Friday and we attach the minutes, they haven't been approved.
Right. But you could stamp draft on it, and that would be possible.
And if there's delays in other items that the board's delayed in seeing them, things happen, so.
I'm not saying I'm just, as a cautionary note, people should be aware
Yes.
that just because the agenda is there.
Right.
And we'll note that on the agenda.
Right.
Other documents do show up until theoretically
Before the meeting.
before the
Right.
meeting.
And if there's a delay in the public seeing it, there's a delay in the board seeing it.
Well, sometimes we don't see it the Friday before. We don't see it until Monday or Tuesday.
Correct.
So, But basically, any item of information that is not legally prohibited from being made public should be made public at the time it's made available to board members, so that members of the public who wish to study it, read it, comment on it, have input on it, have the opportunity to do that. Which I believe is something the legislature does.
Generally, yeah.
I don't often hold the legislature up as a model to follow, but
They've done okay in this.
they've done okay in this regard.
And like, you know, a PowerPoint demonstration, you know, and to have it all in one spot, timely spot, because we do put certain things up on the board or on the web, maybe in different spots, but I think that'll help make it more clear.
And I think too, when we've talked about this, that every meeting, because some people don't have computers, that everything's up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
The next item you'll see is a suggestion that came from the community having a community electronic calendar. What this means is there would be a calendar, just like you see our municipal meetings. It would be a separate calendar that would have community events. So what I'm looking for here, supervisors, is for your input in terms of what types of events we would approve to be on that type of calendar, if you even want to have the calendar. What types of organizations can participate. So I'd like to create a policy that this is what the township is willing to accept and this is what the township will not accept. I come from the nonprofit world, and we were all about engaging with other nonprofits. So we constantly promoted those types of events, but for-profit events, we didn't. So that's up to you what types of rules you'd like to set on that, and if you even like the idea of having a calendar like this. But I would be willing to be the point of contact that community members could send stuff to me, and I would push it out on that calendar, as well as through our social media if they have a page that they'd like me to share the items. I don't want it to become that I'm babysitting, searching for events, but if they send them to me, I'm happy to share them.
Leanne, how would they know that they're able to do that?
So, for example, the community member that suggested this, we were going to sit down and put together a list of, for example, the Lions Club or those different groups, make almost like a mailing list that I would send out an email and say, hey, I'm here and I'm a resource, use me. Go ahead and send me your information. We'd also put it in our newsletter, the paper newsletter that goes out on our website, so that people know that they can click through and contact me with that type of information.
Okay.
But it would also be subject to what you approved in terms of what groups would be permitted to post events.
And board members, it is important that you set some type of policy.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Just as an example, we have multi-purpose rooms that we allow the community to use. But we have policies in regard to those. It has to serve Lower Paxton Township. It has to be a nonprofit organization. You can't use it for a Tupperware party. You can't use it for a wedding reception. You can't be from out of the township trying to find a place to do business. We also have similar rules and regulations for something completely different. The use of our sports fields by youth sports organizations, and there's a hierarchy with youth taking precedent over adult and resident taking precedent over non-resident. So Leanne's looking for guidance, or this could become her only job in that all she would be.
That's what I want to make sure I envision it right, because I just envision your main role as being working for the township and the township activities and letting people know what their government is doing and a new ordinance, and don't forget, you got to put a lid on your recycling and things like that. I would really prefer if that's your main. So I guess it would depend how much work would be involved, or.
And just so you know a little bit of the backstory where this came from, I guess there were certain pancake breakfasts or chicken barbecues that happened on the same date, and it created a little bit of a conflict.
With the Lions and the fire companies and the Kiwanis.
I'm not sure who
Right.
did what, but there is, so that's kind of the backstory, that these groups are wondering, they don't have a central location to go to, and the township seemed like a great place for everybody to mesh
So
together.
that's a good point. Tell me what are we looking, like, would be a calendar?
Actual count, just
And
like our municipal meetings calendar.
And just like how many, how many events could you fit?
Right.
I don't know. How many could you actually fit on a day if we had 3
You could fit 3.
Chicken barbecue.
or more?
But
I mean, it would.
It's electronic, so you can expand it to fit whatever
It would
you
probably
need.
be a fixed calendar. We're talking about kind of the one we have now, similar. It would be a fixed amount of space. I'm just thinking in the summertime.
yeah, there's probably plenty of things
I
that are
mean,
going
just the
on.
fire departments alone could have.
We actually have on our website a possible location for one. Board members, and I didn't realize this and didn't remember this until this minute as we were talking calendar, but We have, okay, our community calendar is there. There's nothing in it at this point in time.
And would everything go through you? They would email you the information, and then that's how you would make your decision based on the guidelines we set.
Correct.
So, yeah, obviously you want to, we want to be a community resource, and if we're trying to get people to go to the website anyway, this would give them another reason to. Then again, we don't want it
And it could be very simple as creating a form that on the back end it says, check if you're a nonprofit, check it if this is a ticketed event, those types of things, that all that information is already set in the form, that I'm not seeking out anything else separate from what's presented to me. I think that would be the easiest, so, like I said, so that I'm not
Standard
constantly-
form. Yeah, it needs to be a standard form, and it doesn't even have to be a calendar per se.
It could be a list.
It just could be a list. If it gets too unwieldy, it could just be a list. People just want to see it all.
Right, in one place.
Mr. Hawk, you had a comment or question?
I think, Mr. Wolf just probably answered the 2 bullet points. What types of posting, what organizations, and I think if we can find it to a nonprofit, and I assume that those nonprofits are within Lower Paxton Township. So that's sort of.
So are you okay with me
Also-
drafting some
yeah.
language that would be, I mean, we'd want to have something in writing that I could present. It's just a policy that we have in place that's standard practice.
And Leanne, like, say they went into, I belong to Lower Paxton Lioness, so they see that we meet the third Monday of the month. Could they contact you to see who the contact person is, if they would be interested in coming to that meeting? Like, say you put on their baseball signups, who would they, if they wanted to contact
So
somebody?
whoever submitted that form to me, if that
Right.
name's available.
I was just wondering if, they
Or I'd
could
send
get
it
in
to the
touch
website
with
that
you.
the group
I
provided.
don't think we want them.
They would have to,
getting in
if it's an
touch
event
with
for
her.
baseball signups, it'd be a click-through to their website.
Oh, and then
Whatever-
that's, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
it wouldn't just be a blanket baseball signups, it would click to whatever that event
Okay,
page is that
that's-
they have.
I guess that's what I'm
So then I'm
asking.
not
Okay.
being a media outlet
Right,
selling all
okay.
this stuff.
So they would just
Yeah.
click it and that
Yep.
would tell them
Yeah.
who to get in touch with.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I was
Rather
trying to
than,
get at.
rather than write the policy now, why don't we let you and the other appropriate members of the staff put together a policy and a proposal on this in written form that the board can review, and then we can provide you with feedback on it. I think I'm hearing that this is an idea we would like to pursue.
The more you can reach out, to the community, I think the better it is.
Mhm.
And it might help some of the
I will,
nonprofit
don't worry.
organizations that are looking for
I'm not shy.
members. Yeah.
There's certainly enough
did-
activity going on within Lower Paxton that you'll probably get a
Pretty comprehensive list.
lot of,
Yeah.
a lot of input. It's now a matter of just, sort of weeding it out and getting it on.
Right, okay.
Leanne, an overlap, since we're talking about our township activities, also to include in that calendar the usage of our facilities. Many organizations will want to rent the pavilion at George Park or something of that sort. So I think that also interfaces. And so those organizations, Lions Club may want to have a picnic in July, and they have it. So if somebody else, not only are they advertising their activity, but also that facility is now known that it cannot be rented because the Lions have rented it. It also does marketing for us to say, well, our facilities are available for usage. So I'm thinking how those might interface as well.
Okay.
And I think we should just go into it with the understanding that we never tried this before, and we never even had a person in your position before, so that the frequency with how it's updated may change, if you find that it's hard to keep up, do it on a daily basis or something like that. So this is,
It's an experiment.
it's more or less a pilot
Yeah.
program, because it's not your main
Right.
responsibilities, but if we can do it, then it'd be great to do it. And so the frequency will remain a fluid situation.
Leanne, coming from my world, as you embark on this project, you have to creep before you crawl, before you walk, before you run. So we're in the creeping stages. But we want to do it right because we want each of those developmental steps to be building blocks for the next step.
Right. Thank you.
Your next point?
The next point was, we had a discussion, a few of the supervisors and I, in regards to township branding. And so I just wanted to get this in front of all of you in terms of how we look to the future in regards to branding the township as a whole, the major corridors, whether it's banners, greenery, and signage at the major entrances. These are all things that were tossed out during that meeting, and I don't know if that was all shared amongst everybody. So I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of those items. I don't think any decisions need to be made tonight, but just something to think about.
What meeting was that? I wasn't aware of it.
No, I just met with Will and
Mr. Judd and I asked to meet with Leanne to discuss some communication issues that we have been discussing.
Okay.
And among those was branding. One thing that I would like to see us make as a goal of the entire township government is the establishment of an identity of Lower Paxton Township as its own community. Too often we've been viewed as sort of that area between Harrisburg and Hershey. Well, we are now larger than certainly Hershey, and I'm sure the next census will prove we are larger than the city of Harrisburg. And with the community events that we've had in recent years, the Lingelstown 250 celebration, the Township's 250 celebration, we really have started down the road of developing Lower Paxton as its own community. Not a suburb, not a bedroom community, but its own community. And I listened to some of the suggestions that have come with the comprehensive plan for ways to add amenities to the village of Lingelstown and other parts of the township, that we really want to continue down this path. That Lower Paxton is its own community, the largest community in Dauphin County, and we want to have a concerted effort. I don't know if we want to use the word brand, but to identify ourselves as such.
That would be, yeah, if we can, maybe township identity or something, that'll be a 1A type thing. We'll see if we can come up with branding. We don't want to make it sound like we're a product or anything like that, but the idea is exciting. And this is, again, you saw the meeting tonight and the stormwater and everything else we have going on. We've got big things that we're going to be really focused on. But this is something I think just exciting. We don't want to be a major budget item, but just something, as the chairman was saying, we're looking forward to the day when Harrisburg is known as the suburb of Lower Paxton. And some of the other things, like greenery, I guess a lot of that will come out of the comprehensive plan. That will require implementing what comes out of the comprehensive plan. I'm sure we could do banners. We would, all this we'd want to look at.
I'm going to interrupt here.
Chris, you hit on something that we sent up a trial balloon several years ago, and that's greenery, maybe along the long corridor of Route 22, and it didn't float very high.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we approached it wrong because we went to individual sponsors as opposed to maybe a shopping center per se where everybody could kick in or that kind of a thing. But you go into a lot of communities where you see these baskets. Hershey has them. We were just in Lidditz not too long ago, and they have them. So there's communities that have them. The problem is once you get it up and you get the basket, who's going to be responsible for maintaining?
Somebody has to water them. Yeah.
But somebody does it in a organized fashion in some of these communities. But it's just something a little different that I'm going to say brands, to use your word, brands us a little better. Sort of a fun place to be. It's a nice place.
And this certainly was not meant to be it's more of a let's think about, not
Right.
we have to do this tomorrow. I know there are so many other things that are, on the list, but I just wanted these in the back of your mind as we move forward,
Yeah.
and that I'm here to help with these things.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that 5 years ago, before I came on the board, I sat on Planning Commission, and for 3 years, we worked on the Business Improvement District on the corridor. And we had everything totally finished. For 3 years, we worked on that budget, banners, flags, the whole 9 yards, greenery, and we did bring it to the supervisors, and it was shot down. So I did want to let you know that we did try to do the banners, the greenery, You know, we were going to do marquees at the, right at the end there where Red Lobster is, marquee out by Harley Davidson. We had that all taken care of. You know, banners in the fall, greenery, baskets throughout. So we did try to do it. We worked on it for 3 years, and like I said, it was shot down by the supervisor. So hopefully something different will come. But
And
I do want to
did-
let you know that
I heard a lot about that, and part of that was, I guess it had to be a formal business district, and they would pay fees and things.
Yeah.
And I guess now, frankly, the 22 corridor is going to be probably in a little bit of certain parts of it, a state of transition. So trying to do that may not work this time, but yeah, I don't want anybody to think that this is an original idea.
On the other hand, Chris, it may entice people to some of the shopping centers that are losing.
Yeah. Well, you know, and it'd be nice, maybe get you know, a couple welcome signs, nice welcome signs up, get some of the, maybe the groups, the community groups.
Could I ask you to pause for 1 minute, because we have a Boy Scout with us, and I see he's about to leave, and before he does, I want to recognize him. And Andrew, I hope I pronounce your last name right. Is it Zeglin? Zeglin. Andrew Zeglin. And
Andrew, do you want to come up to the podium, honey, so we
yeah,
can see
come on
you?
up. That way we'll get
So
you
they
on
can see you
TV
on
for a
TV.
couple of minutes. He is with Boy Scout Troop 360, and they are based at the Holy Name of Jesus. Why don't you tell us what you're here and what you're working on, Andrew?
Well, I am working on the Communications Merit Badge, and part of this I have to visit a town meeting, and I felt that since I'm in the Lower Paxton Township community, that I would visit one of our town meetings.
Excellent.
Thank you for coming.
Holy name.
Holy Name?
Yeah,
At
Holy
the
Name.
church?
Yeah.
You had a fun meeting, you had an interesting meeting. They're not always like that, I have to tell you.
And actually, Bill Payne was my baseball coach.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
You've heard Chief Payne before then.
Yeah.
Well, it's appropriate for you to be up here and speak now while we're hearing from our communications director, since you're working on your communications merit badge. What rank are you at now?
I am life rank.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
Yes.
Can you
And
tell?
your goal is to become an Eagle Scout?
Oh, yes.
All right,
Good for
great.
you. Please come back and join us again, even if you're not working on a badge. We would appreciate seeing you. And if you need anything with communication, please feel free to give Miss Urban a call. She'd be more than happy to help you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Who do you have here with you tonight?
I have my dad,
Your dad. Dad have a name?
Mr. Zeglin.
Mr.
Very good.
You're darn right, that's his name.
That's an ice cream cone from Dairy Queen.
Excuse me, I'm not finished. Could you please return?
Uh-oh. Now you're going to get cross-examined by Mr. Chrisman.
I would just like to ask you, since you're going to have to give a report or write something up as a result of this, what do you anticipate in saying?
Well, there are definitely several points, and like the fire chiefs talked, and the water pollution. I found that interesting, and I would definitely tell my scoutmaster that this was a highly productive meeting, and I enjoyed it, honestly. I like sitting in here listening.
How old are you, Andrew?
I'm 13.
Good.
Are we
Okay,
keeping
very
you from your
nice.
homework? Do you still have homework to do?
No, I finished.
Yeah.
That's a smart
He's on
boy.
top of
Well
this.
organized.
Thank you
really is.
for a very succenct report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing them, Dad. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Good luck on your merit badge.
Thank you.
Okay, Leanne.
Good for him.
Well,
Do you have more?
Nope.
I just wanted to add the signage at major entrances, and I wish I had written down or recalled the gentleman's name. 3 or 4 years ago, a gentleman who was with the Lower Paxton Lions approached me about having the service clubs. At the time I was president of Rotary, having the service clubs go together to do a signage project. So although I'm always reluctant to suggest projects at Rotary, because when you do, you know who's in charge of the project. You know how that works, Bill.
They'll fine you $1. if you do.
Yeah, really. But some of these items that we're discussing, I think, might be great projects for our service clubs, and we could get a lot of community involvement. We certainly saw that with the community celebrations, with the Linglestown Clock, and this is a community that's always willing to pitch in. So, Anything else?
Mr. Hare?
Oh,
Just come up to the,
please come to
You
the
gotta
podium.
come.
This is just basic, it's a clarification. I'm really glad to see more information. Greg Hare, 5902 Pine Hollow Court. The additional information that's going to be provided on the agenda. The change order, will the documentation be available when a change order is put in for any project, or is there legal reasons why that can't be made available?
not till after.
That's what we see.
I'm not aware of any legal reason why. I'm not
Okay.
an attorney,
Because,
and
yeah,
didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn. But Mr. Stein, is there any legal reason why we cannot do that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So what I'm
Yeah.
thinking is going to happen is there'll be an agenda item, change order to the maintenance building.
And you would
And
click on it, and it would bring up the document
That
that
they
would.
would be reviewing here that night.
Yep.
Super.
You will see what we will see.
Can I get a point of order kind of thing? I know we have the public comment at the beginning, and prior to your voting, I was always under the impression, prior to a vote on the, that just got voted on tonight, the funding for the consultant, HRG. Is there, at a point, the public's allowed to make a general comment?
I think we do.
Anytime you want.
Any,
Okay,
after any
well,
item.
that's what
Anytime you want.
because I didn't notice, even in the few times that I've been here now, even with the prior commissioners and supervisors.
I
they
think
don't
he
seem
always
to-
calls for comments.
No, not.
Well, I
not
don't
during the
necessarily
vote.
always call for it, but I've
Yeah.
noticed that folks have not been shy if they want to comment about
But
raising
we
their
are allowed-
hand.
We are allowed, that's why we
Yes.
don't.
And if somebody
Yeah.
raises their hand and wants to comment before a vote, they are most welcome to raise their hand, and it will be recognized as you are now.
Thank you.
And I will point out that there really aren't a lot of public bodies that allow that amount of flexibility in it, but this board is more than willing to do that.
Well, I appreciate that.
Like right now, we're going to hear from John. So, no, do we have anything? John, do you have a question for Leanne? Stay put.
You can do that anytime. I do it all the time. John Trish, 600 Prince Street. I gotta look not so old. I was told the last time I was
You're
here I
looking
look
pretty
old
good
when I
tonight, John. That's
Miss Lindsay's husband gave me a heads up, so. I
He
was
what?
speaking to the
He said,
judge.
he said what?
The judge said that I shouldn't speak here because I look too old. When I speak here, I look young in person, so anyhow. So I'm trying to look a little younger.
I love workshop.
My question is, are you gonna have a section somewhere there that gives us a heads up when they're gonna be making a decision? For example, we had a big hula about the new courthouse, or we're gonna change it from one thing to another, and they're considering which way to go, and not put it there Friday. I mean, because if they're gonna make a decision, for example, the trash waste. I've been up here, I tried to be up here every time I can, when they discussed that. When they discussed what options they're putting out for bid, I'm not aware of what they are because I missed that meeting, and that meeting was technical problems. So if we could have, I don't know if that's possible.
Well,
a session where-
when the agenda is posted and the that's when we see it. So it's not really available prior to the posting of the agenda, which is, as Mr. Wolf explained, is generally posted on Friday afternoons. And then it's available for you to look at all weekend, Monday and Tuesday. You have 4 days notice.
I understand that, but when you're gonna make a decision, for example, you may or may not be changing how many containers we have in our trash.
We may or may not.
Exactly. Now, the bids are out.
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
Well,
Remember,
they're
last
gonna
week
be
we talked about
discussed.
that.
Okay, but
John, we really can't do it more than 4 days in advance. That's about as much.
you guys had a discussion a month ago about the trash.
John, what they discussed was the alternates in the bid document. The board won't make a decision on what types of containers until they act on the bids.
But what I'm talking about,
that will-
Mr. Wolf, is you had a meeting, and Mr. Chrisman made a comment at the meeting that he only uses one can at his property. That part of the meeting I did see. And the other gentleman from the Shade Tree Commission made a comment that he only had 2 containers. And we were discussing whether or not to have 4 containers or 2 64-ounce containers. But whatever you guys decided, or what is out for bid, we don't know.
No, well,
Yes.
the board has not decided that yet,
If there
John.
was something
That's
on the
point.
website for everybody to say, hey, they're thinking about changing it from 4 cans to 2 cans or 1 can,
No,
they might be
John,
interested in coming
John,
up
No,
with
no,
it.
John, what you need to
when we
understand
established that bid, we weren't sure what we wanted to do with containers. We said we would do that as a separate addendum so that when that came in, we could look at it.
Okay, but all
Okay,
I'm
so
saying,
that went
as a
out.
Citizen.
Now,
when you-
tonight, there's another agenda item on it because there's a request for us to consider the size, and you'll see that when we get to that place.
I'm here.
But the bids on that have not gone out, and we have not received them.
You have not received them.
Oh, wait, that's right, the bids have gone out, I'm sorry.
Publicly advertised, the specs
But
are
this
available.
particular addendum, we have to talk about tonight.
I think, are you saying you want Leanne to like draw attention to big issues?
Exactly, that's all. I mean, if you guys have a decision, A or B, for example, the young lady that does the stormwater, the one meeting she was at, you had a decision whether or not to do one project or the other project. Am I right, ma'am?
Yeah, that was last year.
Okay, but you guys knew what project she was thinking about. She knew it, but we didn't. That's all. I'm
Well,
saying.
that's why we're now going to post that supporting documentation on the website so that when you go to the agenda on the website, you can click on it and read exactly what it is we see.
I'm not trying to be difficult.
Yeah.
No, I understand. And, you know, if there's going to be a major decision, like, for example, the ongoing discussions about the trash collection, you'll notice that those discussions tend to come to a workshop meeting first, it's discussed, and then they go to a voting session. And that these items are discussed over multiple meetings. So there's not going to be some major decision sneak up on us. That's not going to happen. Tim, did you have a comment?
And John, if I can just, one comment here. I just want to let you know that we don't get the agenda till after 3 o'clock on Friday. So we're seeing it the same amount of time as what you are. Seriously. Yeah, we don't get it till after 3 o'clock.
Get away from the podium here.
That's why it's called
Mr.
representation.
Murphy.
Yes, good evening. I'm Tim Murphy, 1524 Pine Hollow Road. And I'm really pleasantly surprised at what you're doing with the plan for the agenda. I think that's a major step forward. I think a lot of people will benefit from that. If I can hopefully shed a little bit more light on what John is concerned about, it ties in with an issue that you know is near and dear to my heart, and that is the approval and release of minutes of the meetings. And I think the point that John is bringing up is a good case in point, where a month ago you talked about something, and since then the words got around the township, you know, this is in the works, we could be using a different means of trash collection, and the details of that discussion aren't going to be available for a couple months if we're following the same course that we have for the last 2 years that I'm aware of the minutes being approved about 3 months after the meeting.
Can I ask, Mr.
Well-
Murphy, this is something that
Yeah.
something that I noticed, and the explanation, and it makes perfect sense to me, and you can judge for yourself. Our minutes tend to be much more detailed and in-depth than what's legally required. Well, not tend to be, are much more, just from me being on other boards and seeing it, much more in-depth, much more detailed than is legally required and than what most entities do. So we could do them more quickly, and they would be briefer and less detailed. I mean, it's whatever's humanly possible. The board secretary's over there, so that, just so you know, it's a trade-off, and maybe one is better than the other, but that's the trade-off. Because I did notice when I first came on board that, wow, that's a long time. So it's a matter of, do you want them detailed to where you can go through and get a whole feel for how the meeting was and who said what and what issues were at stake? Or, do you want them in a more timely manner and just have what's legally required, which is a lot less?
And I appreciate the attention to detail, and I think if the detail wasn't there, the minutes wouldn't have nearly as much value. But the fact that they're 3 months behind also decreases their value, because they're lost in terms of the active period of discussion. You're going to move on with this whole subject about the trash and recycling contract, and in the absence of those minutes being available to the rest of the township who wasn't at this meeting or happened to see it on TV. So I guess there's a trade-off there, and unless I'm missing something, why not hire somebody temporarily to get caught up on those minutes so we're only a month behind? And then once you're a month behind, just stay
Well,
one
let me
month
throw,
behind.
and believe me, this is why we're talking about it. Let me throw one more thing at you. We're working to eventually put the meetings that are televised on the website, so you can go back at any time and watch them at any time and hear firsthand what was said.
Okay, that would be a big help too.
So that mitigates the timeliness issue a little bit. I know it's not the same as reading it.
Actually, it's better.
Well, I think that's a good replacement, actually.
Yeah. So, and that's something that we're, okay, Leanne can touch on that.
Hi.
You
So-
thought you got away, didn't you?
Fine. We are doing YouTube, so I met with our IT department, and the next step is that once a meeting is complete on a Tuesday night, by Wednesday, Thursday, it's edited. I receive it Friday morning and can have it onto the website that people can watch Tuesday's meeting over the weekend and know the information for the next Tuesday's meeting. So it should be rather timely. It's just going to take you time to sit through 2.5 hours.
Well, that's exciting. Now, just to clarify, when you say edited, you simply mean,
Adding the date and time of the
yes,
meeting.
you do not
to
mean
the
changing the
screen.
content.
No, it's saying this is the meeting, March 13th.
Because I'll sit down with you and you could do a lot of editing and make me come out looking brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's great news.
So
That is great news.
That should be, and it's hopeful within the next 2 to 3 weeks, that should be up and going. So
And without,
Good for you.
and we're ultimately.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea.
Ultimately trying to,
ease of information getting to the public.
well, and ultimately having, hopefully be able to stream over the internet because, not everybody sees it on TV. And
But for
a
now,
lot
we're
of,
going to settle for YouTube.
oh, well, no, that's fine. Yeah. And we're going to
Yeah.
hopefully have live streaming at some point.
So if we can't get you printed minutes quickly, a YouTube video will work?
Sure, that'd be fine. My only other question to follow up on that is, are those YouTube videos going to be archived? I mean, so they'll be available over a period of time. One meeting is not going to replace
Archived,
a previous one. Okay, correct, great. Thanks very much.
Sure
Mr.
thing.
Murphy, I just wanted to let you know that a 3-hour meeting sometimes takes 10 to 12 hours for her to type everything up. Plus she's doing all of her other work. If she just had to do the minutes for that week, that would be great, but she's, our administrative assistant, so,
I appreciate
yeah.
that. Yes, I understand.
Okay, we still have a couple of other major items of business to deal with tonight, so let's move on to item 9. And this is a status report from Raftellus Financial Consultants regarding the stormwater funding feasibility study for the township. Mr. Wolf, the update.
Yes, board members, at a previous meeting, you received a verbal report from our consultants at Raftellus. And at that point in time, they said they would issue the draft report for your review. This draft report basically reaffirms everything they previously told you. So I don't want to re-give their report or read this report to you. My intent would be, my intent, board members, would be for you to give me any questions or comments that you may have on this report. And if you have none, take draft off and have Raftellus reissue it for your action on the 13th. If the board would then act on the 13th to approve the final Phase 1 report, I'll ask Raftellus to give us a Phase 2 proposal.
So approval of the Phase 1 report does not commit us to a specific course of action yet.
It does not commit you to a specific course of action, although the consultant has recommended, and if you go back into their recommendations,
Is he going with full funding?
that
Page
was their
14.
recommendation, yes.
Right.
14.
Page 14. That's
Number
their
7.
recommendation. So you have a consultant's recommendation to basically do full funding, although they've given you options. I'll get to it.
So that would be take the 1.5 million out of the,
Well, they have, in this report, they have it broken down all three ways.
Right.
Let me get to it. I think it's further down than.
while you're looking for that, let me ask you a question. Under the cost category, they have in there the leaf collection equipment and personnel and other public works personnel. So what that cost is, then does that come out of the public works budget?
Right now it does, yes.
Okay, but I'm saying, so that would come over to this
Correct.
and take it out of the public works then?
Correct. Essentially, it would become it would be removed from the general fund, same people would do the work, and it would be paid for by your enterprise fund, your stormwater fund. And right there, okay, I'm sorry.
Because leaves, obviously, because the leaves getting into the water.
Correct.
Is part, just.
It's part of the pollution.
We're not so much thinking about the actual curbside collection as a
also
service.
clo-
It's
Yeah,
it's
it
part
also
of this
clogs up
goal.
your system.
Yeah.
Yes. There's the Raftelis recommendation. Now, that's their recommendation. They outline all options for you. So all options are contained in this report, plus their recommendation. You don't have to take the recommendation. But you will make that choice when you move to phase 2.
Right.
Yeah.
So approving this Phase 1 document basically provides us with a roadmap, and we can choose which direction to go as we go into Phase 2?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. And I think it's, and this is going to require a very large amount of public education. Everyone needs to understand that this is a federally mandated program, and Lower Paxton has no choice but to comply with it. And it is a federally mandated program with $0 provided to pay for it.
That's key.
And we are talking, I believe, if my math is correct, at somewhere close to a $3 million overall project between what's currently being done and what we need to continue, what we need to add on in order to comply. This is going to require either a significant property tax hike or a significant additional fee placed on quarterly sewage bills. And how that occurs is something we need to discuss.
Well,
Yes.
I agree with Mr. Henry, and I just did some numbers based on what I saw in the report. And these are just round figures. Your sewer bill per year is roughly $600. $149 a quarter times 4, rounded off at $600. If the full funding is used, and you use the maximum amount of $174 a year, you're in round figures about $900 a year, George. 600 plus 175?
No.
I don't think it'll be
The full
quite-
fee would be 170, for full funding of the program, the estimated fee right now, maximum would be $174 a year, or on a quarterly basis, I can't do the math real.
30 to 40.
No, quarterly, divide 174 by 4. Is somebody doing that real quick?
Well, if it's $174 a year,
Okay, you're right, yes.
and you add it to 600, you're actually $874.
It's about $43.
The 600 is,
Or
600.
780.
600 and 174.
The sewer you'll pay
Oh, I'm
extra.
sorry.
You'll pay your sewer bill, and then this will be extra.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
Right, it'll be on the
All
sewer
I'm
bill.
saying,
Yeah,
Robin, is your sewer bill already is $600.
right.
Per year.
You pay $174 more
I
for
know.
stormwater.
Right.
You add 600 and
Yep.
174, you get 774.
Yeah, not 8.
But the and maybe, I don't know whether you consider it a wash, it's a possible that you can get a 8 mils reduction in real estate, which is 160. So, you know, is that a benefit?
Well, the only problem is if we go to the real estate, and I hate to say this, the churches and the schools will not be taxed. Where if we go to just the quarterly without doing the real estate, then the churches and the schools will be,
It spreads
everybody
it
will
out.
have to pay.
It
will
spreads it
spread
out. Yeah.
Everybody will have to pay. Yeah, and I have a concern too. I had a call from someone that lives in Sweat Tower. They just got their first bill and it's $60 per year. And he asked what ours was, and I told him. And so I called Mr. Wolf because I said, how can theirs be $60 per year and ours is going to be 170 some? And Mr. Wolf told me that we have more obligation because we're a larger township. So, yeah, because I mean, I do have a concern.
And they
you
aren't
know.
covered by a TMDL yet, and, you know, they could well have a bigger base to choose from as far as commercial and industrial impervious coverage,
Well, and then part of the.
such as the rail yard.
Part of the public education, I don't like that word, information campaign that we do as we implement this or even make the final decisions will be that we got to make sure the consultant shows his math and that everybody sees the math, knowing what went into ours versus, you know, a hypothetical Swatara or somebody else. So it's important that we show our math on this.
The bottom line is that it's going to add somewhere around $43 per quarter. Now, of course, it's going to get spread out, so it might not be quite that much, but could add up to $43 per quarter to everybody's sewage bill. And keeping in mind, federally mandated, we have no choice.
John Church, 600 Prince Street. Does this include the amount that you're reporting? Is that the 1.9 or 7 million that he said we need to add to it? Or is that the 2+ million we're paying now plus the 1 million?
No, it's all-
Everything.
everything, all together. Yeah, it's all together.
And it's going to be a fee, I was told, not a
Well,
tax.
Haven't
we
decided
haven't
on that.
decided that yet. It can be either, you can fund it only one of two ways, either a fee added on to quarterly sewage bills or a general property tax increase.
Well, back about 6-7 months ago, when the church was here fighting to get an improvement guarantee to double the impervious land coverage on their property, I was told that it was going to be a fee and that they would be required to pay.
That decision has not been made yet.
So then that was changed.
No, it wasn't changed. It was never made. This study had to be done in order to provide us with the data to make that decision. That decision has never been made. And if you heard that, what you heard was not correct.
The decision that was made was to approve the church to put in a preschool and a playground and a parking lot and double the impervious coverage on their property. And I objected because they're going to add more water going downstream. And I was told that it was going to be a fee that they would be required to pay.
Well,
That decision has not yet been made. Now, yes, you're correct. That site plan was approved and that building is under construction. But how this will be paid for, whether by a property tax hike or a fee, has not yet been made pending getting the information in this report.
Right.
And unfortunately, it is a decision that we have to make over how long do we have, George?
Well, you'll have to make that early on in the Phase 2 process. They won't be able to, Phase 2 is basically implementing a fee. So you'll make that decision if you choose to retain their services for Phase 2.
Right.
If you decide not to retain their services for Phase 2, then you're de facto saying that you're going to fund it through real estate taxes and you're moving no further, and you know what the amount of the taxation needs to be.
Yeah, to me, it just seems that the better way to go is a full funding approach.
Because everybody will get the fee then.
Everyone shares.
You mean doing it by a fee as opposed to a
You get
property
cut
tax
on your
hike?
real estate.
Here's the thing, George, if we approve this as a fee, will we have the ability on the monthly or the quarterly sewage bill to specifically identify the fee,
Yes.
Right.
as in federally mandated stormwater treatment fee. I want to be very, very, very precise as to
That's
what
what
is
I
happening.
asked the solicitor at one point, and we don't think there's any restrictions on the language, Steve.
I think there is, as long as they have enough characters that they can add into that spot, you know.
No,
make it.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have enough characters to add in my additional comment, which is comma, an approach that will be ineffective and ultimately won't work
We'll
and
have
is a
to
total
turn,
waste of
it'll
money, but we can't.
They'll
fit
say,
that on
turn
the
to
Switch
page
bill.
2.
Turn to page 2, yeah.
Continued on back.
Maybe I can write a diatribe for the website on the ineffectiveness of this and the fact that the federal government and the state government love to place mandates on us without giving us the money. But
And don't forget, the EPA is the largest agency in the federal government, and they get away with a lot of things that
Mr. Henry, I'll consider that your proposal
they're
for your
called
master's
unfunded
thesis.
mandates.
I could write a master's thesis on this, and well, I won't go into it. There's a large policy discussion to be had there, but I just want. It would appear that we're heading more toward doing it as a fee to the sewage ratepayers, but I want people to understand what it is and why it is.
Then I have a question, Mr. Henry. So we'll take the 1.5 million out of our budget, and will they see a decrease in their taxes at all?
Well, that I think will depend upon the budget process for next year. Because you will recall that last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we increased the amount of money that we are placing into the employee retirement fund. We have additional, I heard from the Public Works Director that we have roads that are falling behind schedule in terms of being resurfaced. So I think we need to look at all those numbers, and hopefully it will allow for some amount of a tax cut. But I don't think we ought to promise that until we see next year's budget numbers.
So is
I'm
that part
reluctant to make a promise until numbers are actually available to base
Is
the
that
promise on.
Exactly.
Is
There are
that
too many
part of
variables.
this decision? I mean, when we vote to go through, if we vote to go through with a fee, George, at that point, is that when we say what we would do to, if we would offset?
You will have to through that process. If we are going to bill beginning 1/1/19, and we're already in March of 18,
Right.
as we go through the phase 2 process, you will have to make that decision. So that's an upcoming decision over the next several
As
months.
far as where those revenues are going to
Where they're
go.
coming, where they're going, yes.
But we wouldn't make a millage rate decision until we do the budgeting process
Correct.
later in the year.
Right.
Because there may be other variables that will come into play in the budget preparation.
Well, you can't make the millage decision until, any millage decision, until you first decide what you're doing with the stormwater
Exactly.
fee
Yes.
in its totality.
Exactly.
So we have to decide, if we decide to go with a fee, that decision has to be made over the next few weeks. Millage rates will be decided much later in the year, and we'll see how it all balances out in the end once we get all those budget numbers. But it would seem to me that it's more fair to do this as a fee and to spread it out over more folks. As John said, you have a facility that was built that's adding stormwater into the system. They ought to contribute to the program like everybody else and not put it only on homeowners. Okay, do we need to take any specific action on this, George?
I will place the final phase 1 report on the agenda for the next meeting.
Tuesday.
Okay.
And I will schedule Raf Tellis to make a phase 2 presentation to you shortly thereafter.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, we are going to look at continued review of bid specifications for the collection of solid waste, recyclables, and leaf waste. And at this point, I will recuse myself from the discussion because I have a conflict of interest relative to Penn Waste, which is a potential bidder, and I will turn the meeting over to the Vice Chairman, Mr. Chrisman.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Item 10 has to do with an alternate bid specification. The bids have been put out. There has been a meeting by the bidders with Mr. Wolf, and there have been some requests And we have one issue before us, and Mr. Wolf, you can correct me at any point in time. The only issue that we have that has been requested and we have to make a decision is the following. First of all, let me identify that which is in the alternate. In the alternate, if you remember, we said that we would like to look at the totes as an alternate. So when we prepared those, we said in the alternates, there would be 2 64-inch trash and 1 64-inch gallons for recycling. What did I say? Inch, sorry, gallons for the recycling. At their meeting, they have indicated that most municipalities or many municipalities go with 1 96-inch for trash and 1 64 for recycling. So I understand that we have some samples that we might look at. So may we bring, John, since you're back there, could you be the Vanna White, please? And that way, but this way we have a choice that we need to make a decision so that George can go back and we can correct those.
You got a job, John.
Thank you, John.
You need to go into acting.
Thank you. Amanda, you can help us. Are both of these 64s, or this is the 96? Okay.
Isn't necessarily the 96 that you would be getting. The 96 that you could get is about 2 inches larger on the bottom, and it's taller and more narrow.
Okay.
So it's not as wide.
I have a picture of one to show you.
Oh, okay. Mr. Wolf, I didn't mean to steal the thunder
Amanda,
for you and
you're
Amanda.
fine. Before you sit down, just while you're there, you said that you actually have some garbage in one of those?
Okay, so there's 50 pounds of garbage in this container. The typical residential weight for your trash is about 38 pounds. 8 pounds for recycling, 38 pounds for trash. So there's 50 in this one. If you want to try to pull this one around, there's 50 pounds, which is more than what is normally in a residential trash.
And that's the 90.
This is the 96.
That's the 90.
Sure, go test it. Amanda, why didn't you let John pull this one? No, John. This one had the weight in, John.
Make sure you get near a microphone, Amanda, so that people can hear you.
Is it heavy, John?
Not off camera. Come on, John. Nice try. Okay, so what's before us is the request from the bidders who are saying that most municipalities, instead of doing 2 64s for trash and a 64 recycle, that we go to 1 96 for trash and 1 64 for recycling. So all we need to do is make the decision so that we can tell George to change the amendment so that the bidders are looking at that.
Mr.
Would any
Chrisman,
of you like to walk out
you're
and take a
actually
look?
on slide 3, and please, you've done. I would like to note, most municipalities currently, Derry Township, Swatara Township, and Lower Allen Township, at a minimum, are using 196 and 164, 96 for solid waste and 64 for recyclables. These are pen waste containers. I believe that the container that Amanda was suggesting that would be ours is the 96 on the left, which in this case is a little bit taller than the 64, having a less wide footprint comparatively. It's interesting to note, though, if you look at the actual space on the floor for all three of these containers, the 36, the 64, and the 96, the space on the floor is the same now, or similar. I have the pen waste 96 behind or beside the 64 in this picture, wheels touching wheels. So if you would put them side by side, board members, the 96 sticks out about 1.5 inches more than the 64. And again, this would be similar to the containers we would be getting. You can see the difference is 96 is wider.
You're telling me that the bottoms on those are the same size as the bottoms on these?
Well, that 96 is a little bit more squat than what we're
But
talking
even the
about.
recyclable, that bottom is
That's-
the
yeah.
same, really?
Yeah, that's it.
Because the photograph looks like it's a lot smaller.
Well, if you go back,
Do we want to try that?
let me go back. If you look at the photograph of the 64 and the garbage can in the 64 actually has, if not the same, the 64 has a smaller base than the garbage can, a typical
Yeah,
garbage can.
that's what I'm saying. Those look
Yeah.
smaller than what this
That-
one is.
no,
No,
that's-
you're saying it's the
that's-
same thing.
That's the same. Those are Penn Waste and, those are in Lower Allen.
I'll have to add more brick to our space. They're huge.
And I guess one of the benefits if we do this is that these will be automatic, these are going to be automatic
Automatic
collection,
collection,
which would be a major change.
yes. It will be automated collection, 196 and 164, one for recyclables and one for solid waste, means that each truck has a one movement.
Right.
Now, it's important to note that 96 gallons of waste is less than what our program allows you to put out. And all three haulers said in the case of somebody having an extra bag of trash, you put it out beside the 96 and the hauler, his driver gets out and puts it in the truck. That's not a problem. But they do say in most instances and for most people on most occasions, 96 gallons will hold most of the material.
Right.
And for this alternate bid, this was the recommendation or request of the bidders.
It was the first
Yeah.
time I've ever seen all three bidders agree on anything. And they all agree that one of these and one of these is better than one of these for recyclables and two of these for solid waste.
So all three bidders recommended this.
Yes.
Yes.
While you're thinking about board members, I do want to note one other thing. A lid.
A lid.
A lid. We have found that the vast majority of our recyclables are put out in Lower Paxton Township, and people do not put lids on their containers. And when we get 40-mile-an-hour winds like we are going to receive this evening, anything that's close to the top ends up blown out of the container and into your neighbor's yard or further down.
Or coming the other way onto my yard
And these lids
from you.
don't come off, which is one of the reasons why many people don't have lids, is they put them on the first time, and the first time they had wind, their lid was the first thing to blow away. So these are very durable. Lids go with the container, and it's pretty much impossible to put the container out without having the lid down, because you really have a hard time taking it back.
Right.
with the lid down.
And you're saying the wind won't dump them over?
Not like a normal can.
Okay.
And if the wind does get it, it doesn't typically blow into the street like a normal trash can
Wind
because
is
of the weight of the
take one that has
container.
material in it.
And what other townships have this? Because this will be probably a bit of an adjustment. Should we go this route, it will be. It might surprise some people. So they'd like to hear that other townships have.
Board members from the haulers, and I did confirm that Derry Township currently has 196, 164. Swatara has 196, 164. Lower Allen, as the pictures up there with the Penn waste containers shows, and Susquehanna. I've also been told, but I haven't been able to confirm it on their website, but Republic has informed us that Hampton Township has 196 and 164, but that's not what their website.
As far as the neighbor goes, we got Susquehanna, who have experienced this, and
I'm sorry, I said Susquehanna. Susquehanna only has it for recyclables.
Because they're still under an old contract.
okay.
Yeah,
They have not
Swatara
come up
is
for renewal, and when they do,
Swatara.
it'll probably be in the same vein, I'm guessing.
So Swatara, Derry, Lower Allen are definite. Hampton, we've been told, I haven't confirmed it. Susquehanna has it only for recyclables at this point. But the wave in the industry is the automated collection system and these types of containers.
Mr. Wolf, I just have a question. So if they are not placed properly at the curb, will they get out of the truck and replace it so that they can pick it up with the arm of the truck? How does that work?
I would assume if, and I think the haulers will tell you that it depends on what you say not properly.
Mm-hmm.
If it is close but no WEO, I'm sure they're going to get it. If it's 5 feet back, they're not getting out.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
If there's some reason why they pull up and they just can't reach it with their arm, their arms are very flexible. They'll make an attempt. But if it's not within the reach of their arm, they're not going for it.
And
No, just to say, and remember, our decision-making here tonight is we're not saying this is what we're going with.
Right.
All we're doing is changing what is in our current amendment RFP that says the 264s. All of them together are asking, would we please change it to 196 and 164? And that's all we're doing tonight. So no decision-making, John. Just want to make sure you know.
to your knowledge, George, are these the dimensions required for automatic trash collection?
My knowledge is that these types of containers in very similar formats are what is used by the industry for automated collection.
But not necessarily this size.
Oh, no, they're
That's it.
this size.
That's it.
Okay. Well, I want to make clear, if we
That's it.
did go with this, what comes with it and why we do it. Because like I said, trash is one of those things that, you may not think of the township for most of the week, and then this is the one where you do, and it will be a bit of an adjustment. And I can see my garage, we don't have a lot of room. We'll probably have to make a minor adjustment, part with some of the kids' things that we've been, too late in parting with. So I want to make sure everybody knows, what would go into a decision.
Simple question, George. Can you opt for 264s?
No, we have to make.
That's what we have in the current amendment proposal.
Well,
That's what they're asking for
yeah,
change.
we could offer, that's what we have right now, 264s for solid waste collection. But if we do that, then we're buying, basically 100% more solid waste containers. And the other thing we didn't think about is that means the arm has to dump twice. It slows down the collection process.
So it's going to be more expensive if we go
Right.
that route.
You're meaning that we would have two, then we'd have three. We'd have 264s for trash.
Right. That's the way the spec reads
That's the way
right
the
now.
specs read now.
And then,
I could hide a neighborhood in that 96.
If I may, we have some residents here tonight. Does anybody want to give us some feedback on what they think?
I was waiting for all the board members first before I was
okay. I'm
asking.
sorry.
If any board members have any more questions before we go. Okay, now, no, they're finished. It's your turn. I'm trying to maintain control here.
My point was, one of the reasons I came tonight is was curious. I have no preference. I have something very similar to the 64 right now with the lids, but I was going to put a vote in for waste management. It's always been my contention, if I'm working with a provider, whether it's Comcast or whoever, and I'm happy with the service and it's still reasonably priced, I would be in favor of staying with waste management. But if the price is right with another hauler, I don't have a problem. I just would hope that we maintain the curbside pickup, one bulk item per. I don't want to go back to the spring cleanup days.
Yeah. And that piece that you've identified is in the contract specs. With regard to your first comment, we're not in a position to consider any particular company because we have to look at all the quotes, even though we have been using waste management heretofore. But thank you.
The only other question I had, whatever we go with, the automation I know is going to be the wave of the future, so my recommendation would be to go that way. Are we buying the container as an individual?
No, the bid specifications require that the successful bidder provide the containers for the duration of the contract, maintain the containers short of willful negligence on the part of the property of the resident. So if one wears out, it gets replaced. If somebody takes it and uses it for who knows what that isn't garbage related, then that's on them.
And my only other question was then, I would assume it would become part of the property when we would move, if we were to move, that container would stay with that address.
It would stay with the hauler, and he would most likely leave it at that address for the next collection, yes.
There are just kind of questions that I was thinking. When I saw it on the agenda, I wanted to bring it up. But again, waste management's been good to us. I love the bulk item pickup, size of the container. I'll take it down. I won't make Karen take it down.
Right. Thank you. Obviously, from my personal standpoint, I'm concerned about the cost. If I know it's going to be more expensive, then I'd like to help our residents by reducing that cost. So, okay, we need to have some consensus because we need to give Mr. I thought we were finished. Tim, I didn't see you indicate you had a comment that you'd like to make to the board.
That's big. Thank you. Tim Murphy, 1524 Pine Hollow Road. This is a step in the right direction. I believe it was last month when you talked about this. I expressed an opinion. There was no way I would ever use 2 64-gallon trash containers in a month. And this one's a lot bigger than one of them, but it's better than 2 64 gallons. So I guess that's a step in the right direction if we end up going that way. My only other concern would be at some point I'd like to see the yellow lid on the big one and the green lid on the small one. I put out a whole lot more recycling than I do trash, and I wish that there would be more encouragement of that in the township.
We could perhaps make a request that, you'd like yours customized color-wise on the top.
Tim makes a very good point, though. Most residents in the township are using at most 1 garbage can, which is roughly 34, 36 gallons. All 3 haulers said in the municipalities that they've implemented the 64 recycling tote, the recycling volume has increased.
Good.
Good.
That's good. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the board, we have to reach some closure minus Mr. Henry with regard to direction for Mr. Wolf.
What do you need?
I'll entertain thoughts, and then we'll see if we can reach consensus. I'll start at that end of the ladies first.
I don't want 3 containers sitting outside, so we'll have to go with the 96 and the 64.
So you're what?
I go with the 96 and the 64 because I don't want 3 of those sitting outside.
Okay, good. Mr. Hawk?
Yeah, that 96 is for a family of 10.
Are you telling us, are you giving us some future direction to what's happening in your family?
You could come across the street from me. We have 12 people in one house.
Bill, so I still don't know what your thinking is.
2 or 3, Bill?
Yeah.
So you're
2?
okay with the
264.
Okay.
No, you can't do 264.
You can't, no.
I made that earlier,
But if you do 264, you're going to have 3
3.
garbage cans.
3.
Yeah, so you would have 2 64s
Fours
for your
and
trash,
1.
and then 1 64 for your recyclables.
Which is
This is the 64 for your recyclables,
Yeah.
and then 2 64s in place of that big one. So you would have 3 trash cans.
Oh my God! I have to build a separate shed.
So, Mr. Hawk, all I'm asking is, are you endorsing 2 cans, a trash at 96 and a recycling at 64?
for the bids, right? You're okay with these?
Whatever the majority wants, I'll live with. But
Okay.
I may loan one to my neighbor.
And this is just,
You could subcontract.
this is just to get the bids.
That's all we're doing, is we just have to get this into this as an alternate bid
to the one that
which
we
is out there, but right now it's 2 64s and a 64 for recycling.
And it is eyeballing it. It's very
Right.
big. I'll have to make accommodations. I assume these haulers they're providing them and paying for them, that if they could make them smaller and do the job, they would.
I'm assuming
they
that
have a
too. They're in it for money.
They have financial, but given to what it is, I support the old.
96.
And
Yes.
if, I just want to make it known that if you do the per bag, you will not be receiving the trash
Trash can.
container. So if you pay per bag, you will not be
right.
receiving. Maybe that's what you should do, pay per bag,
Yeah.
you know.
All right.
I need more than
I-
a paper bag, but I don't need that sucker.
All right, we have reached consensus, so Mr. Wolf, it is the direction of
Thank
the
you.
board to change the wording in the amendment that's out there. I will relinquish the chair back to the chairman, Mr. Lohman. Henry, you're on.
I'll say that was far more entertaining than last week's on-lot sewage disposal debate. So that was, at least we had that going for us. Okay, it brings us to item 11, ought to know.
Mr.
Oh,
Chairman,
now we have Comcast.
Mr. Chairman, there is absolutely no hurry on this item 11. We've been at it 2.5 hours, I can certainly save this for next month.
I think that would be a great idea.
Okay.
Be a great idea. So with that, improvement guarantees, we have
two.
We have several?
Two. We have one
Two.
reduction, one release, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Any questions of Mr. Wolf regarding the improvement guarantees?
They're both letter of credits. Mr. Chairman, I'll move we accept the two improvement guarantees as presented.
It's been moved we accept the improvement guarantees. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, is there any other business to come before the Board of Supervisors? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good night.